What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Here we go. Another late night, logical, plausible, probable. In this context, it's an after show coming in to you after the stream over on the one and only Salvador Cordova's channel, where he was having a conversation with somebody whose screen name I can't say without chuckling, the Sphincter of Doom. And they were discussing some of the aspects of the abiogenesis problem, origin of life issues, and some of the more fundamental questions about that topic, and different questions that are asked about that subject by a variety of people in a variety of contexts. And it was interesting as always. Fired up side chat and such. Welcome, Jamie. Welcome to the after show. How are you doing? What do you think about the actually, before I turn it over to you, so anybody who wants to join, link is in the description. We can first come in, we'll kind of talk in general about the discussion over on Sal's channel, and then after we kind of get through that for a little bit, then we can kind of digress into other subjects, and we'll see where the night takes us. But, well, Jamie just left us, but we got Jungle coming in. Jungle, welcome to the stream. How are you?
Hey, what's up? What's going on? I'm good.
Not much. So, what did you think about the discussion over on Sal's channel?
I caught the tail end of it. I was trying to ask a channel to make it go longer, but it didn't. He didn't seem like a question.
Well, they'd been going for quite a while at that point.
Well, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I was actually very surprised. I'd initially set this thing up to start almost an hour ago, and I kept pushing it back and pushing it back because I didn't anticipate Sal having a discussion for almost 3 hours. So, yeah, it was good. I mean, I don't know. To me, it was just yet another standard discussion with an atheist / agnostic, whatever he is, about abiogenesis. And no matter what context things are put in, it's always just, we don't know yet. And I really don't, at this point, I'm really just coming to the conclusion that there is no, like, I'm honestly starting to wonder if there's any point in even having this discussion with the actual, like, the staunch atheists, because if you ask them if there is any scenario in which a chemical process being executed without an intelligent agent is implausible, and they say, I just don't know if anything's actually implausible. I mean, you don't live in, like, reality.
Well, with God, yeah, they're appealing to God then. A God.
No. I mean, without an intelligent agent being in play.
Yeah.
Like, is there any chemical process that exists that without the intelligent agent, without the intelligent agent is not plausible? And
if anything's
they say
possible,
I'm asking. No, the point I'm making is, unless you're just going to operate from the perspective that there is no, there is nothing that is implausible. Everything is 100% possible, even if nobody's actually doing it. It's like the whole aspect I was making the whole conversation I was having the other day about, like, if you stick a nut and a bolt next to each other, is it remotely plausible that the freaking nut's going to put itself on the bolt and tighten it all the way down? And then we're like, well, maybe it's possible. I'm like, okay, well then, if there's two pieces of steel that have a hole in them, is it plausible that them sitting on a piece of concrete, that somehow with no intelligent agent, nobody coming along and doing it, that the two pieces of steel are going to put themselves together, they're going to line up the holes, and they're going to put the bolt through, and the bolt's going to tighten itself on? Well, I think there's probably some scenario in which that's reasonable. I mean, if that's your worldview, then congratulations on saying that I'm the one that believes in magic.
That only happens with a mechanic, and then things fall together.
Yeah. Okay, we got somebody named Fozy has just joined the stream. What's going on, Fozy?
Yo, what's up, guys? Can you hear me?
We can.
Cool, man. How's everything going tonight?
Pretty good. Were you watching the stream over on Sal's channel?
No, I wasn't, unfortunately, but I've just seen your stream go live, so I thought I'll join in and contribute. I don't know, see what's up, what's happening.
Okay, so do you know what the conversation was about?
Based off your title, I guess it's Abiogenesis open discussion. So I'm guessing that you are a creationist. Is that right?
Well, yeah, I mean, this is an after show for a 2.5 hour debate that just happened on the topic. That's why it's called an after show.
Oh, okay. I didn't catch that part of it, but yeah. So I'm assuming you're a creationist. You, from what I just heard you talk about the probability of things are happening, and if that's someone's worldview, then
Actually, I didn't use the word probability. I said plausibility.
Everybody's
you're
a
one of those guys.
creationist
Right.
of
Okay,
one
cool. I
form.
got you.
Well,
Everybody's a creationist of one form or another. Because we all believe it happened. It's just how it happened.
Okay, so just to kind of get past this weirdness of an introduction, so LPP, what's your worldview? What's your stance?
well, you're the one coming into my stream, so you can talk about yourself. You don't get to come and do interrogations with me after you say that I'm one of those guys. So you can expound upon yourself, and then we can get into further discussion.
What
Sure,
kind of
that's what you like.
creationist? What kind of creationist are you?
I'm not a career. I mean, okay. So let me break it down real quick.
Everybody is.
I mean, like, yeah, you're right. You know, we're all creationists at the end of the day. I'm just trying to, you know what? I just ain't feeling this vibe right now. I just feel that this was a poor introduction.
Well, I mean, we can reset. I'm just saying, like,
Sure, yeah.
if you're coming into my stream and you're going to start interrogating me, so let's start again. So, who are you?
I'm just a dude, and I thought it was an interesting conversation to come in and have a discussion surrounding abiogenesis. That's all.
Sounds great. So, what is your worldview?
My worldview, I guess, is I come from a place where I understand that in order for something to exist, there would have had to have been potential for that thing to exist. So cause and effect, right? You know, things just don't happen for the sake of things happening. I understand that evolution is really only a thing beyond abiogenesis. Like, evolution starts after biogenesis, right? In order for something to exist, it has to come from something. Like, we've only ever lived. Sorry, let me back up again. We've only ever observed life coming from life. So the discussion going back to the inception of things existing is, well, where did life come from? And that's the question, I guess. So, I mean, do I believe in a God in the sense of what is described in the Bible? No, I do not. Is there an originator? Is there an Jungle? Just chill out for a second. Is there a point in time where was there a point in time where something would have had to have given the potential for something to exist? Yes. What is that? I don't know. That's my position.
Is there a difference between abiogenesis and evolution? What's the difference?
Is there a difference between what? Sorry?
What's the difference between abiogenesis and evolution?
I don't understand what you're saying. Are you saying biogenesis or abiogenesis?
Abiogenesis.
Okay, so what's your definition of abiogenesis, just so I understand?
They both need information that's not there. I'm wondering what the difference is.
No, that's not an explanation of abiogenesis. Could you give me your definition of abiogenesis, please?
I asked you first what the difference was between abiogenesis and evolution.
And I'm asking you what your definition of abiogenesis is, so I can
It's
explain
the one in
to
the
you.
dictionary. It's the one in the dictionary, okay?
Okay, so what is that? So do you even know what it is, or are you just...
Don't play games. It's life. I'm not
playing games.
Life.
I'm legitimately asking you, see,
it's
because these kind of conversations...
Life.
These kind of conversations happen where I get involved with these kind of conversations and people repeat what other people say. So I'm just trying to determine where you sit in terms of, do you actually understand?
Yo, bro, you need to chill out. Okay, so you are coming in and trying to control the conversation, number one. So we can have dialogue or we can be pricks. And I am well known for dominating conversations. I'm actually trying to welcome you into somebody who's new into the stream and actually have, reasonable conversation. So Jungle asked you if what your opinion is about the difference between, and if you see a difference between abiogenesis and evolution. That's a very simple question. Answering the question with a question is a very standard deflection mechanism. And then you're attempting to take control and reverse the conversation. So do you actually want to have dialogue, or do you want to try and dominate the conversation?
Okay, so there's going to be two pieces here. One is that I've already answered that. And if he was listening, he would have caught or understood what I said. And second is that I don't want to waste my time talking to someone who's going to have this circular kind of conversation where it's like he's asking me questions that he doesn't understand the definitions of what he's asking me. This isn't like a flat earth conversation where there's like a pre-planned algorithm where it's like I say A, so you default to B, C, and D.
So, Fonzie, are you operating from a very significant preconception of how those conversations go? Hang on. Jungle, I'm going to ask you to step out for a second. Me and Fonzie are going to have a little conversation here. I'll let you back in a minute. Okay, so Fonzie, you and me. Okay, so let's go here. I'm not really sure why you're being so confrontational coming into this conversation. So why don't we, since we don't know each other, why don't we establish starting points? Would you agree that's a reasonable position to take?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. So in relation to abiogenesis, do you think that, we're just repeating things here, do you believe, yes or no, that a intelligent agent would be required for the initiation of life?
Do I agree that a intelligent agent would be required for an initiation of life? I don't agree or disagree. I don't know the answer to that.
Okay. What do you view as the fundamental requirements for life to exist?
Well, again, if we look at the basic definition of abiogenesis, is the original evolution of life for organisms from an inorganic or
Nello?
Can you? Oh shit! Can you hear me?
Yeah, I mean, you just stopped talking.
Oh, sorry. Okay. No, it's on my end there. Sorry. So yeah, abiogenesis, like I say, is the original evolution of life or living organisms from an inorganic or inanimate substance. So in order for something to exist, there would have had to have been potential for that thing to exist. That's my stance, I guess. That's my response to you.
Well, that's not what I asked. I asked what are the requirements, the recognized requirements for life.
Well, from what we can observe, life can only come from life from what we can observe.
Yeah, but I'm talking about like the fundamental basics of the biological system. Like, what are the recognized necessities?
Well, cells.
So cells are like about 1,000 steps up the food chain. Obviously, a cell is a necessity, but what are the recognized fundamental components of the cell that are required?
If you're looking for specifics, as in you're trying to look for like particular biological examples of that, I don't have that for you. Okay, I'm not at that level of detail where I'm going to sit down and give you the biology to explain that to you. But what I know is that life, from what we have observed to date, is that life can only come from life. There is no such thing as abiogenesis, which is spontaneous combustion of life. Things just don't happen for the sake of things happening. Things only happen if there is potential for that to happen, which is cause and effect. That's the position where I'm coming from.
So you've repeated that whole deal of like it's possible cause and effect, but would you agree or disagree that there are all sorts of things that are possible but are not? And by possible, I mean like if done in appropriate sequence, then and appropriate conditions, then this can occur. But the requirements for all those conditions to occur are what is actually in question in relation to the plausibility of said outcome.
Okay, could you summarize that again once more for me, please?
That's about as dumbed down as you can get it, bro.
Well, no, it's not. See, the thing is that if you're trying to talk intelligent or intellectual, then you need to understand that not everyone is thinking at your level. So a part of being intelligent is being able to converse with the person you're talking to. So this is what I'm trying to squeeze out of you at the moment. So
Are you trying to squeeze something out of me? So
Well,
okay. So per your own admission, you don't actually know what is required. But I'm the one who is not approaching this appropriately.
Is that what you're thinking?
Well, I mean, you keep coming back and being a little bit. You've been being a prick since the second you came in here. So I'm just giving you what you got when you make snarky statements. And so again, I'm going back to the whole premise of: do we want to have genuine dialogue, or do we want to turn this into a snark fest? Because believe me, I can be every bit as sarcastic as anyone. So if we want to go down, if we want to go down that rabbit hole, we can. I mean, or we can have.
So can I. But what's the productivity of that?
Well, that's what I'm asking you, because you're the one that keeps being snarky.
I think it's your interpretation of that. That's not actually my position. My position is from a place where I'm saying that
so let's
comes from a place.
So let's go back to the extraordinary basics of cause and effect, right? In order for an effect to occur, there has to be a cause, right?
Yes.
Now, for the effect to be executed, are there additional parameters that must be in place from a process perspective in order for the effect of that cause to be actualized?
I don't know, man. I don't know what you're saying. I don't understand what you're saying.
Okay, if you put dominoes in a row and you push one and they start falling over,
right?
If you want to have the dominoes from the aerial view spell hello world, do you have to have put all of the dominoes in a specific pattern in order to have that occur?
No.
Excuse me?
No.
In order for the dominoes that have now fallen over, that if you look down on it from an aerial perspective, they're now falling over and it spells the word hello. Right. You're telling me that does not require a pre-existent action versus just having a whole boatload of them in a line. And yes, they both got knocked over, but they're in a line. They're not going to spell out the word hello, are they?
No, because it's probability. I mean, that's equivalent to me asking you if
no. Right now we're establishing if there has to be steps in place in order to achieve an outcome in certain scenarios. It's not just raw cause and effect.
What I'm asking, okay, maybe you can help me understand this, because this is my position where I'm coming from. Okay, is that if you have a boiling pot of water, this is how I visualize it, okay? If you have a boiling pot of water, and when you look at that boiling, when I observe that surface of the boiling water, it's absolute chaos. There's no consistency. There's no predictability. Things are just happening crazily out of my control. Is it at all possible that for a fraction of a second, that within all of that chaos, within that boiling, rippling water, that all of a sudden that there could be a moment of calm? Could it be at all possible that there could be a flat surface just for a fraction of a second within that chaos?
That's within the realm of possibility, but you are completely missing the entire point. That is, and the question that's being asked, you are asking from a raw basics of physics and chemistry perspective. Can a random occurrence happen?
Correct. And I'm affiliating I'm associating that to the idea of...
let's go back to what is the necessity.
Could these dominoes be a random? Could the message within those dominoes be a random occurrence?
Yes, okay, so let's think about that. Well, no.
Well, why not? Well, could there not be a
flat? So hang on, dude, bro. Okay, what is the necessity for syntax?
let's just stick to the level of understanding that I have
we're
right now.
okay. We're going into basic language here. So, what is syntax?
I'm just going to entertain your audience and say I don't know. So explain to me what syntax is.
Okay, so are you suggesting that there is no difference between boiling water and a word?
What I'm saying is that the way that those dominoes fell is a random occurrence. Is it at all possible that underneath is it
Okay, hang on. Are you suggesting that the dominoes that have been set up as the result of an intelligent agent taking action and aligning them with foreknowledge of the outcome based on the cause and effect from a physics standpoint to both fall in and hit in the appropriate pattern to both maintain the chain reaction and have it form in a predetermined manner in order to spell out a word? Are you suggesting that's random?
what you're asking me is, and I mean, just
That's
allow
a
me.
very simple yes or no question, man. Is
Well,
that
no,
random? Do you actually
well,
view that as
no.
random? If you actually view that as random, then I don't know what world you live in.
Well, then, okay. Again, like, let me try to explain to you
Bro,
where I'm
what
coming
world do you live
from.
in? Yes or
Can-
no?
can-
Are dominoes that have been organized
Can
into
you
a
allow
specific
me?
pattern that
Can
have
you
literally
allow
been
me?
open, that have
Don't
literally
back me into a corner.
okay, that have literally been pushed by a human in order to spell out a specific word? Are you actually, this is a yes or no question. If you don't answer yes or no, I'm letting other people in and we'll extend this conversation with other folks. Because then at this point, I'll be dealing with a complete idiot. So yes or no, is all of that process that has been the result of somebody taking a whole crap load of dominoes out of a freaking box, setting them up on a piece of concrete in a specific order, and then once they're all done perfectly, pushing the first one, causing a chain reaction, which then, if you look down on it, spells out the word hello. Is that, and all of the components that were required for that to occur, is that chance? Yes or no?
That's not a yes or no question. I'm sorry.
What's up, guys? How y'all doing?
What's up?
Hey, how's it going, man?
Hey, pigs. So,
Hey, we're getting echo from somebody.
It could be my mic. Hang on.
What I was trying to explain to you, LPP, is that
Yeah, I'm done with that guy. It's so how you guys doing?
Not too bad, man.
I'm good.
I can't handle the level of stupidity coming from people these days. It's really starting to get obnoxious. Just the sheer myopic obsession with circular escape mechanisms. I mean, it's really reaching extreme levels. And who the hell is echoing? Like, somebody fix that.
It ain't me. I don't think.
Let's see here. So, what's going on, man? How you doing? Welcome to stream, Chris. How are you?
I'm good, brother.
I'm hanging in there. Thank you for all your support and everyone who came out to the debate discussion. So that'll be hopefully it for a while, because being the host of a stream is tough. So I'm very grateful that John's hosting the stream, because then I don't have to deal with the headaches.
I hear
Yeah.
you. It's not as easy as they make it look, is it sometimes? Trust me, I know.
Yeah. So I don't know why you do those debates, man. It's those discussions. It was great. You all had a very general, nice conversation back and forth with each other. But some of this stuff is just getting like sharks have been jumped multiple times in these discussions, and I mean it's reaching the level of obvious and utter desperation. You don't have to respond to this, though. You're nicer than me. The level of desperation coming out of these YouTube atheists is just reaching extremes that surpass any and all semblance of rationality. I mean, Is there any chemical process scenario that is implausible to occur without an intelligent agent? I don't know how more simple of a question that can be. And I don't know if I can answer that one. I think there's probably a way that it could have. Like, are you kidding me? Like, you're a chemical engineer. Dude, if you actually do that professionally, I literally dare you. I have a relative who's a PhD biochemist or a commercial chemist. He worked for one of those companies. I guarantee you he would never have gone and asked for capital for one of his projects, or they would have brought something to market and just been like, well, I think that this new thing that we've come up with is just going to it's possible that it could magically create itself. Like, give me a couple $1 million to like figure this process out and do a bunch of testing and figure out the exact steps that have to be done in which particular order, which machines we have to build in order to execute this on a macro manufacturing level to accomplish XYZ. And they might be doing something as simple as like creating a specific type of ink for, a clothing or whatever. I mean, there's all sorts of stupidly simple, like from our perspective, like from the layman's perspective, like, oh, that can't be that big of a deal. And then you look into the processes that are required to accomplish these, relatively straightforward, quote unquote, straightforward processes. And it's like, there's 700 steps, people. Like, there's who knows how many different temperature changes and washings, all these different things that have to occur in order to achieve this outcome. Like, dude, professionally, go to your peers and be like, I think whatever we're working on could create itself. We're not involved. I mean, it's enough of my tangent. I'll turn it over to let people talk. But this stuff is, to me, is just getting ridiculous. And I can't take these people seriously anymore. I yield.
Well, in cell biology, isn't there all kinds of preparation of all kinds of different chemicals and proteins, even just to get the working function that's required?
There's 85, no less than 85 proteins in the transcription complex. No less than 85. There's like a whole section of it. They don't even know how it works yet. They haven't actually been able to identify like this one little section of it. Who knows what's actually going on there? They don't even know yet what's going on in this one little section. No less than 85 different proteins. And then let's think about that. Okay, how many chemical actions are happening in that context? That's before you even think about all of the chemical processes that had to occur in order for those proteins to be synthesized. I mean, we're talking probably no less than 100,000 chemical reactions are required to even
get but you're getting ahead of yourself, John.
To even get to that point.
You just need amino acids to be able to, come together, and that's it, man.
That's a whole process. It's a whole process, a factory of preparing parts, getting this ready, that ready, putting this in place, putting that in place, and then us doing the assembly, and then making the directed working function, and then carrying out the orders, and come on.
Wasn't it Dr. James Tour said that for just the protein-to-protein interactions, like I think it was for the D Pyranos, he said it was like 1 × 10 to the 79 billionth interactions that are possible. He's like, we only have like 1 × 10 to the 90 particles in the entire universe. So this is like an insane number to even try to fathom.
Yeah, everything has to be in place, and SWE was saying that the universe is not whatever she said. I forget what she said. Something like it's not like a causation thing or something like that. But without the universe consisting of the working parts inside of us that are essential, 20 of them, we wouldn't exist. And you have to have each of those 20 common elements. It's like the universe was spoken into existence to enable our existence. So
well, I mean, that would be counted as a written word as well. So I mean that should kind of indicate that it's the same narrative.
and
Oh,
and then you have the programming. Yeah, so
I think Sal was trying to say something.
yeah, I don't lump all atheists or people who are skeptics in the same pot. I mean, and it took it took a while, even for me, before I felt comfortable with the arguments of intelligent design. I mean, it took a few years. I was definitely on the ID side, but I was not completely comfortable until after years later, and I felt Sphincter Doom was at least open-minded, saying, you know, I can't prove it, which I really respected, and that he seemed open to the possibility. Now, I can deal with that a little more than someone saying, yeah, we're going to figure it out, and look at all these papers we have. I have real problems with that. And so I can deal with that personality type versus someone like, who we could list all the names there. There are people that I have had as opponents that just hated me. It's just, I couldn't have the longer we were around each other, the more they hated me. And it's like, nah, that's not what I want to deal with. But this was a debate I agreed to 7 weeks ago because of a referral. And it may be the last one I do for a while, because initially what I said, when Sphincter Doom said, I want to debate abiogenesis, I said, could we do one that's 50 hours long and we'll break it apart over several weeks? Because that's actually the way that we could explore the issue carefully. And after I said that, I said, well, that's basically going to be the molecular biology course that Change Tan is teaching, and which I'm recapitulating for the internet. And so rather than a debate, the case will actually be laid out, God willing, over the coming year, where I have her molecular biology lectures, which are almost half of the Stairway to Life, but she's teaching it at a secular college. So, and what are they going to falter? Because she's just citing peer-reviewed work, and she's trying to describe the complexity of the cell. That's a responsibility to teach what the cell is, but she's just giving a little different angle to how difficult it is to construct. So her whole theme is try to understand the cell by trying to build it from scratch. And that's actually very clever, because as you try to actually create the environments to build parts of the cell from scratch, you realize the difficulty. And I covered that a little bit tonight when I was talking about the homolinkage. And I was saying just how hard it is to be able to build even synthetic DNA. Like if you had a computer, if you had the DNA sequence you had in mind on a computer, and then you go to a lab and say, build this, the steps are incredible. So when Immutable Destiny said, well, it's just chemistry, you don't need an intelligent agent, it's just going to happen. I said, no, the problem is you have to build the right environment. That's why you have chemical engineers, because these reactions just don't happen by themselves unless you construct an environment for them to happen.
So quick sidebar on that topic, and what you just said about Immutable Destiny kind of caused this idea, this thought. So literally last night, out of semi-curiosity for another reason, I decided to go back and review, and by review I mean rewatch, one of the lectures from an Open MIT biochemistry course. So I watched the whole series of them like a year and a half ago, but my knowledge has expanded dramatically in much more detail in terms of like practical application of those concepts, especially very much in this past year, right? In terms of like, actually I'm reading all these papers and such, and actually, oh, like, okay, I understand what that means, right? What I was intrigued by, my curiosity, and this applies to the Immutable Destiny component, was I went back and I rewatched the lecture specifically on, and this is like undergrad level, the lecture on DNA transcription. And it was extraordinarily fascinating. It confirmed my suspicion that the intricacies of that process were extraordinarily glossed over. And, the very bare bones basics of what is happening in the transcription process was delineated in a MIT biochemistry course. And I'm not bashing the course. It was great information. I mean, professor was awesome, very fun to listen to, all that kind of stuff. That's not what I'm saying. I'm talking about from a knowledge-based perspective. If, as you and I both know, and you even more so than I do, but your point about, like actually synthesizing DNA is not that easy. Like there's a lot of stuff that's actually happening, and it can be straightforward if you have all the appropriate components, right? And all the different tools to work with, then you can. If you don't have those, it's an entirely different scenario, right? And I honestly wonder if, in spite of his knowledge and his undergrad in biochemistry, I honestly wonder if Immutable Destiny is still operating from this somewhat glossed over perspective of the actual intricacies that are necessary for these things that we take for granted to occur. And I say that kind of in line with, the fact that it seems to just be completely outside of the frame of reference for the average human, of like, for this, there are probably no less than several hundred encode, transmit, decode steps that are happening for my voice to get from my computer and my microphone to your ears.
Yep. And
we take that for granted, that there's hundreds of these processes occurring in order for this very simplistic information to get from A to B. And I think the exact same thing, left my tangent here, but my point is, I'm honestly wondering how many people who have that underlying knowledge, but not much more than that, get completely blind to the actual complexity and necessities in order for these things to occur. Would that all make sense? My long-winded diatribe there.
Well, it's not just there's some that they're not completely blind, but I'm still mesmerized. And if people wonder why I'm so patient with some people on the other side, and probably Emery could probably echo these thoughts, is if you're a creationist and you're a Christian, you got to be dealing with these people day in and day out while you're in grad school. They're going to be your professors and peers. If you're just in a state of being just upset with everyone, you're going to go crazy. And so I have to learn to cooperate with these people. But I have these professors that are like teaching me biochemistry, and it's like, you don't see this. But on the other hand, sometimes I get the sense that there's kind of a quiet consensus that this is designed, but it's only like the really vocal atheists, the militant anti-theists like Larry Moran, who's a professor of biochemistry, that they're the exception. So I just really don't know what to say. I don't lump them all in together. And there are probably there's kind of like a very large silent minority that kind of realize this is phenomenal. So the ones that I don't get are probably of Immutable's temperament. It's like, don't you see it? And he was saying, it's just chemistry. You don't need intelligent agency. And I tried to counter that. I said, you need intelligent agency to build the environment. That's why you have chemical engineers. You're not going to get the reactions unless you have, like you were saying, the tools. So I don't try to get it. I don't.
Well, and with Immutable, one of the things that just blows my mind, again, this goes back to do they stop at the actual investigation, right? Are they actually continuing to investigate the new discoveries, or are they only just reiterating the exact same talking points? That's what I feel. That's why I feel. And for case in point, like I was watching a lecture last night from, I think, 2 years ago, and they were talking about some of their experiments with epigenetic tagging in a mouse, and how it's the tagging and removing the capacity for the tagging directly compromised the body plan. So we're not talking about anything being changed in the genes. We're talking about the inability to apply the tagging after the thing is already an embryo. So, I mean, and that's what corrupted the body plan. And I'm like, wait, hang on, folks. Let's think about this for uno momento, people. If you're going to claim that this is all subject to the genome and mutations and such, but the body plan itself is being one of the fundamental components for its actual expression requires non-genetic information. We have epigenetic information at this point. It didn't exist. Like, it's being added Like your entire model is being annihilated if at this point. Like we now have proof of this. And like it's been experimented, it's been tested, it's been observed in real time in vivo. Okay. And we're still arguing that this has no relevance to the overall discussion. I mean, like, anyway.
Yeah. So I'm with you there. How can we have all these origin of life researchers that actually supposedly study the complexity of the cell, and then they generate these peer-reviewed papers that are utter garbage? I don't get it. And I see it especially in evolutionary biology. It's like, are you blind? So I've gotten to the point. Oh, that relates to the show I had with Otangelo yesterday. I don't know how many saw it, where I was reading what's happening in social studies, social sciences, and academia, and they're pumping out all this garbage. And I said, how can you guys be in a culture where you've lost all your rationality? You deliberately, this postmodernism. And I said, okay, I sort of get it now. People have just willfully stopped being rational. They only pretend to be. And I used to think that people would naturally want to be rational. And the behavior that's going on in academia and the social sciences is it's strong evidence people can be willfully irrational. And I gave examples. It was hilarious, but also just tragically pathetic what's going on with these people in the social sciences. I think that show's going to be up on my channel maybe tomorrow, where I talk about the rottenness in academia, like in the gender studies program. Like there's this one paper that won an award, and it was about how they related queer theory to military drones. I have no idea what that was. And then three professors started doing a hoax. They submitted 20 papers to these peer-reviewed journals, and it was totally bogus. They're talking about how, like, one of the papers said, let's try to reform physics and cosmology by introducing interpretive dance and feminist theory and gender studies. And that paper was accepted. It was utter garbage. And so they're trying to show that even the quote unquote experts in these fields can't distinguish sincere submissions versus gibberish that was intentionally generated to be gibberish just to mock them.
Well, and what's ironic about that, Sal, is that group. I assume you're referring to the one that did this within the last couple of years. It's relatively recent. They're iterating.
Yeah, they call it SoCal Squared. It was Peter Boghossian.
But the irony is that they were actually retesting a very, very similar experiment that was done back in the 90s. And the irony is that they actually. I forget. I think it was in like their follow-up paper, or maybe it was an article I read about it. I forget. But they were actually talking about how they did a comparison to the success rate of the original experiment back in the 90s from where the guy was, and his acceptance rate of his paper, the bogus papers and all that kind of stuff, and then basically how it was clear it was like beyond doubt that now, fast forward 25 years, whatever it was way easier to get complete crap accepted into supposedly high level, high credible peer-reviewed journals. And in as an extension of all that, and I'll bring some other people into the conversation. I've been running my mouth quite a bit here. I want to say it was last year, might have been the year. It was I forget his name now, but there was a gentleman who is a regular editor for Nature, and specifically the chemistry section. And he wrote a whole exposition about how he was no longer going to be partaking in this process. He was tired of having all the papers sent with no processes attached, and that they were unable to. He's like, I'm done with having to supposedly review these papers that they won't tell me how they did it. Like, how can we actually go and check and see if something is valid in chemistry if you don't even tell us what you did? And I'm supposed to believe you? Is this one of the papers? Can dogs be racist?
Yeah.
The colonial legacies of racialized dogs in Kenya and Zambia. Wow. It's amazing. You can't make this stuff up. That's the irony. But guys, who wants to weigh in on this topic?
Well, I just think it's evidence of devolution. Go ahead, Keith.
I know. You go ahead. I was just gonna say, just for what you're talking about there, it's just like a lot of these, like you talking about YouTube atheists, they maybe read the headlines or maybe even the abstract, but they're catchy. They try to like, even this is Augustine one from like 20 December this past year, where they talk about something like I forgot what it was, Origins of Life. What was it that said? I might even have it in my tab over here. Just something about how like they made a new discovery that supports a surprising new view of how life originated on the planet, and they see that and they think, okay, these chemists they're onto it, they've got this figured out. But they have no idea how really they're completely clueless, and that's not saying that they're a knock on them. It's just they are trying, they're doing what they what
I tell you the thing that's really been pissing me off is the number of papers that I've read that when you make it all the way through, what they end up just finding is the disproving of their like title and their initial abstract.
That goes with evolution too. Period.
And it's like, well, hang on a second. Your conclusion is that you were wrong. Why didn't you say that at the beginning? Like, you portrayed this as like, for 3/4 of the way through this, you've portrayed this as, a viable, hypothesis, and you were finding evidence for it. And then like fast forward to the end, turns out we were wrong. Like, what? Well, hold on. Like, and what really gets me about that is, and this is what really cracks me up about good old Dr. Danny Boy, is I actually busted him one time because he was always spewing his bovine scatology about how anybody believes in creation, all you do is read an abstract. And that little joker did exactly that. He pulled something from an abstract and another like little sentence from like the last paragraph of a conclusion or like the discussion portion. And then I went and actually read but it was like a restricted paper. Anyway, I got access to it. I read the whole thing. And in the portion directly before what he had sniped, they literally stated they were wrong. And they didn't have enough evidence for their conclusion or for their hypothesis. And I'm like, and you little bastard, you came in here and you showed this about how we were wrong. We were talking about, and here's a paper from 2019 or whatever, 2018, I think it was, that shows that you're wrong. And I'm like, man, that doesn't seem right. And I went with my gut and I went and looked it up. And sure enough, there it was, plain as day. And it's like, it's like, dude, man, you get out of town, bro. And here's the other, just like quick sidebar. I'm gonna quit running my mouth, and I keep saying that. I am a very, very, very strong believer in the whole premise of thin slicing. And if you've never read Malcolm Gladwell's book Blink, I strongly recommend you read that book, because the short version is what we view as intuition and gut reactions and such is actually the result of high level processing by our subconscious. And it has been studied out the wazoo that depending on the exact instance and the like decision type, we have anywhere from like an 88 to a 97% chance of our gut instinct being correct. And the second you pivot your mental, like the way you approach things, to the standpoint that if my intuition tells me that I'm probably this is the correct path, immediately go and look for reasons you're correct. Don't immediately try to figure out why you're wrong. Look to see if there is a reason to extenuate your initial conclusion or direction that you think is right, because you have an 88 to 97% chance of being correct. And I remember when I read that back early days of business, when I was interacting with high level business executives and such, and I had to convince them to do business with my company. I operate from that perspective that, hey, if I had my gut told me it was right, close the deal, go for the close. And 9 times out of 10, It was the right move. And the same logic has been, I'm just using it as an example, but like that's been applied to so many different aspects. There's been ridiculous amounts of studies on this. And I have found that in this past year being on YouTube dealing with Evo atheists is almost every single time there's been some gigantic supposed countermand and you're just wrong. You know what you're talking about. Take the time, go with your gut, go look it up. Extraordinarily high probability that it may not have been the standard talking point a decade ago or 20 years ago. There's a very strong probability that the whole in Google change your search results tab to be like within the last year for the results. Very high probability. There's something that directly countermands whatever the atheist talking point is when it comes to evolution and biology. It's just an ongoing trend. I find it fascinating.
Yeah. When you think about it, the idea of evolution is wrong. So every time they claim evolution, that's going to be disproved because their whole idea is wrong.
How many times we saw that over the last decade or more? You know what I mean? Where they make a claim, and then lo and behold, it's something. Evidence comes out, and they have to, and of course they're going to say, yeah, science is ever evolving. But I mean, if you just wait a while, especially if it's a big, large claim, that they don't really have a lot of evidence, it's 90% going to turn out to be bunk.
Yeah, and of course, I've been watching this for 50 years, 60 years, whatever. All the claims through all these years being disproved. Every claim they ever made is always disproved because there is no evolution.
I've been watching pretty hard for 15, but I've been watching for about 22. So, I mean, I'm way behind you, but I've just noticed that trend really steady for 15 years, man, like every year or two. And they have to come up with something new. But as far as origin of life, I mean, there was like a paper like every year or less, just saying something about how this new something's found or claiming to be like the next thing that's going to lead us closer to origin of life. And like I said, if you read that, like John was saying, like a lot of times at the end, they'll end up defeating what they were talking about to begin with. So, but that's probably where a lot of the YouTube atheists that John's probably frustrated with. And I understand that it's almost like flat earthers, I'm not going to argue with them, let them argue amongst themselves because there's nothing you're ever going to do. With some of these YouTube atheists, if they don't want to admit that DNA has coded information, then I don't know what to do. I'm not going to argue with them anymore. I'm just going to let them be in their ignorance, and I just can't do it. It hurts my brain too much.
Going back to that subject of the peer review system, I mean, it kind of makes me wonder if they're even actually reviewing it, or if it's there's some kind of an algorithm or an AI system that's supposed to be programmed to reject certain theories and ideals. I mean, it's similar to probably what YouTube has for their algorithm. Like you put certain words into the search, and all of a sudden it's just blocked, or it doesn't even show up in their feed.
But
I don't know. That's just the way I look at it.
It actually goes through professors. The different professors will examine it and, agree with it or not.
Yeah, but here's
help you along.
Sometimes
they'll help you correct it or something, but
here's the thing that's going to be considered in that whole deal, though, right? Like a lot of these folks who are, they're selected, I guess. I mean, it's kind of an honor, right, to be a reviewer and all that kind of stuff. But let's get real. These guys are doing their own stuff. Like they're running their own labs. They're doing their own research. They're applying for grants. They're giving speeches, all that kind of stuff. Does anybody actually think that they're spending tons and tons and tons of time review? Oh, cool. You have 500 papers to review for this quarter or whatever the amount is, right? Okay, so they're going to flip through. They're going to skim. Nope. Oh, yeah, I know that guy. Yeah, I'll read that one in a minute. Oh, so-and-so. Yeah, he works, oh, yeah, he used to be he was a grad student under XYZ. Yeah, let me read that one. Let's get real. We all know that's what's happening.
Any trigger words, they'll say, no.
So, we know, as much as they want to act all high and mighty, that's not what's going on. We all know that's what's going on, right? We know this. This is what's happening. And why do you think that people bow and scrape in academia? Why are people afraid to challenge the status quo? Oh, wait, because they can't piss off those in the positions of control. Like, we all know this. This is obvious.
And that's what's happened in the social sciences. It shows just the natural tendency for herd thinking. And even when something's so obviously stupid, they're not able to correct themselves.
Right.
I mean, it's just amazing how craziness and falsehood can just evolve and keep piling on. It's just like the emperor has no clothes, and how a myth is just perpetuated. Could I share this one about the SoCal hoax? It's just a paragraph and a half.
I was just going to say that, I mean, clearly there's the presuppositions of the person and the individuals that are in charge of all this. They have a huge impact on the way that things are handled at the top.
So this is from the Atlantic. The sheer craziness of the papers the authors concocted. Okay, so these were hoax papers that were accepted. This is one example. The sheer craziness of the papers the authors concocted makes this fact all the more shocking. One of their papers reads like a straightforward riff on the SoCal hoax, dismissing Western astronomy as sexist and imperialist. It makes a case for physics departments to study feminist astrology or practice interpretive dance. So instead, other means superior to the natural science exist to extract alternative knowledges about stars and enriching astronomy, including ethnography and other social science methodologies. Careful examination of the intersection of extant astrologies from around the globe, incorporation of mythological narratives, and modern feminist analysis of them, feminist interpretive dance, especially with regard to the movements of the stars and their astrological significance, and direct application of feminist post-colonial discourse concerning alternative knowledges and cultural narratives. The point of this is how stupidity can be reinforced by peer review, and it just never stops. It's never stopped until it's checked, and it's starting to spill over. So if we wonder how bad ideas can perpetuate, even in the sciences, you're seeing an example of this, of how irrationality can the peer review process doesn't stop it. In fact, it helps establish it.
Yeah, and you know there's a problem with the peer review system when they all hate Trump and they hate Christians. You know there's a problem.
And it's more fundamental than the peer review system. It's just the breakdown of culture and the respect for truth and rationality. It's gone postmodern, and it's just silliness now.
Yeah, I was going to mention that when you said it, Sal, earlier. That's one of the first things I was going to lead with was like now that they're able to control the news a little bit more, and that they can control what they pump out as far as like, you know, with this the global warming and all this, they can put any false or misleading information on origins of life or anything to evolution just as well, and people will swallow it up. And if you try to, you know, do anything to the contrary, they can censor you. So that I could totally see that coming.
It's definitely being controlled by people that have no understanding of science to begin with.
Just to push their agenda, whether it's right or wrong. You know, it's worldview. You know. I think they're closer to the meaning of life than they are the origins of life. So I'm figuring it out.
The meaning of life.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I will say is, as far as I could tell, applied physics and certain parts of chemistry and definitely engineering, it's still, as a matter of necessity, it's still holding on and working. Anytime you're doing something that affects life critical systems, and if you're wrong about it, there's a certain level of accountability in the system that's just going to be naturally there. So, you know, thankfully, not all of academia is falling apart, but it's getting really bad.
Oh, there's some great scientists out there. Yeah, I'm not knocking all scientists at all. I'm just not at all. It's just
Yeah, I was joking saying it was genetic entropy, but it's actually corruption of the system.
but it just takes a few bad apples, as the old saying goes, they're in a batch. So, and that's what
Well,
we're having.
if the education is bad, it's, then the people that are educated are also going to have bad education. And if they, make it bad too, it's probably going to be worse. And then the next generation is going to have a worse education.
Mm-hmm.
And it just keeps on escalating like that. And it comes to the point where they have no clue about even what history is or what, biblical teaching or creation or,
Well,
they won't know anything.
10 years ago or so, you could use their own papers and stuff, and you could pull stuff out there for your arguments. Now it's just like it's so one-sided, or it's they're not going to tilt anything to help a creationist out that might help them out. Like of course, the soft dinosaur tissue, how they wouldn't test it. When they were offering them money to test it, carbon data. It's just like they're not going to do anything. Even came right out and said Jack Horner was like, I don't want to give the creationists any kind of anything to I don't know how he phrased it, but paraphrasing it to use or run with or whatever. So it's just dishonest is what it is.
When you see the hatred,
guys,
the outright hatred, you know there's something wrong when there's so much hatred.
Oh yeah,
very true. So in line with all of that, let's welcome at least my favorite YouTube atheist, the one and only Danny, to the stream.
Closet theist.
Good morning, everyone.
What's up?
Hey, Danny, what's
Good
up?
morning. Have you gone around the world or something?
It is past 12.
Good morning in 15 minutes.
Yeah. Well, okay.
I'm so tired. So
okay. Hyper literalist.
I was actually literally wrong there, but
sidebar. I actually I occasionally do random joking diagnoses, but also with some underlying seriousness. I really think that, not necessarily for 100%, there's always the outlier, but I've noticed it as a significant trend that YouTube atheists specifically are hyper literal. And if you it's some syntax semantics and pragmatics just complete, and context overall just completely escape them and get all fired up and get all worked
you mean
up.
A lot of them are pedantic?
Well, yeah. But I mean, just
they call me in Speed's channel. They call me very pedantic, but
they were calling you pedantic.
Yeah, they call me a pedant every day.
Okay. If that's true, then.
But to be fair, I think anybody I talk to, it will feel very pedantic because I'm very technical about the language, very very technical. In fact, to a point where it's difficult to talk to people, so it's hard to blame them. But I could see why someone would think I'm pedantic, but I don't. Obviously, pedantic is a negative thing. I don't think I'm being pedantic. I think I'm being very technical and careful. But anyways,
Godzilla says, "Oops." Danny is posing as Leo. Clearly. Oh man, that's Yeah, well, when it comes to being pedantic, I don't know. That's a toss-up between Leo and John Peterson, probably.
Have you noticed how many YouTube atheists, or I know I keep saying that word, but okay, maybe not all YouTube atheists are not John's describing.
If you're always prefacing not all atheists, it's okay. I get what y'all are saying. Okay?
I just want to make the distinction because I don't want to. There are honest atheists. So
I know what you're saying. So,
but a lot of them claim to they'll quick to claim autism or a portion of it, and I don't just mean it because it happened tonight. I've just seen that a lot. So And really, not even just, I mean, just in general, not even, maybe not even just the atheists. It's like even some Christians that have their theology all whacked out too. They claim a bit of autism.
Autism.
To hide behind.
Who do you think is overwhelmingly atheist? Females or males?
I would say probably more males.
Yeah.
I would just
think,
as a
Yeah,
guess.
they're more aggressive.
I don't think anybody's an atheist. Nobody's an atheist. Everybody believes in creation. It's just a matter of what kind of creation.
I like that
in.
comment you made, Jungle. That is true. We're all creationists.
You know, I've had to point out to a lot of atheists lately that the United States Supreme Court recognizes atheism as a belief system. And I've heard so many atheists say, we don't have a worldview, we don't have beliefs. And I'm like, well, you need to go tell that to the Supreme Court then, because they're clearly recognizing that you guys are.
Yeah, that's when they get down to like, you have to define atheism these days. You just have to, you know what I mean? Because you got your people that lack a belief. You know what I mean?
Beliefs.
They can call it whatever they want. It's just agnosticism just being repackaged. But the point
strong, weak, and all that crap.
Their beliefs are contradictory.
Yeah, there's the oh, go ahead.
They're just avoiding the burden of proof when they do that. You know what I mean? That way they don't have to. You know what I mean? If you claim there are no gods, then you've got the onus. But if you just say, well, I just lack a belief, and then you can just comfortably ride in the middle, then bounce back to the far side when you want to, and then come back to the middle.
Because they don't want to defend their position. That's it.
Yeah.
My philosophy class started philosophy religion, and we went over Pascal's wager and the ontological argument today. Still today.
So are you teaching it, Danny?
Yeah. So we're gonna go over like probably 7 arguments for and against the existence of God. Also, I got Stephen Law to come into my classroom and present the first cause argument, as well as like the problem of evil.
Maybe I should. I don't know if I'm subscribed to you. Maybe I should subscribe so I can.
Well, no, that's in my high school. I'm not going to record any of that. But
you're not. It's not on YouTube. Oh.
No, that won't be on YouTube. But I'm saying at my high school that I teach at.
Oh, the high school. Okay.
My bad.
What do you teach in high school? What class?
Biology and philosophy.
Oh, they have philosophy, and you're okay. They didn't have that when I was in high school.
Yeah, it's not very common, but I said I wanted to do it, and they gave it to me.
That was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was.
I think a lot of kids could definitely benefit from that. You know what I mean? A solid foundation in philosophy, at least the basics.
Yeah, that would have been interesting in high school. Maybe I would have paid attention.
I took sociology, and when I first got college, that was a waste of time.
I think they should teach logic 101 when they're in high school.
Yeah, that's a requirement at one of the schools here, but not at mine. But we went over. We had a logic unit. That was our first unit. Was logic.
Maybe that split that semester with like ethics or something. You know.
I'll tell you what I found very disturbing about, and I just didn't apply to all schools, but it's a general trend. It's like that's about 5 years ago now. I had a interaction with a group of juniors at Notre Dame University, and we were having a conversation about geopolitical stuff, and we were having this whole back and forth, and I kept making references, and they weren't getting it. And I'm talking like basic stuff from the last 50, 60 years. Okay. And it was obvious they was not resonating with them. And anyway, we ended up getting this whole clarification. I started asking them some questions, and very long story short, it turned out that juniors at Notre Dame University had never had a history class that went past World War II.
Yeah.
They didn't know anything about the Cold War. They didn't. I mean, I'm talking all the way to the point of they confused whether or not Reagan or Clinton was the president in the 90s. And I'm like, you have got to be kidding me. Anyway, they didn't understand what the Cold War, like they knew they'd heard the word Cold War, but they did not know what the hell it was. Like they could not actually expound in any semblance of like what actually occurred. And I'm like, that whole that experience has stuck with me ever since. And I'm like, I'm interacting with kids at theoretically a very high level academic institution in the United States. And they don't know about something this basic from the last century, right? That arguably has not figuratively, but literally shaped the world, right? And like a lot of things that we're dealing with in the here and now are a direct result of the Cold War. And they don't even know what the heck it is. Like this, it disturbs me. And then, you look into some of the gigantic percentage of public schools in the United States stopped teaching civics in the mid 80s.
Yeah. And
then we wonder why we see all of these ridiculous crap happening on the federal, state, and local level. And it's like, well, if you have at this point, we're talking over 30 years of people were not taught the basics of civics.
That was the best class in school, in high school.
It's amazing. But anyway.
Other than science, I like science. But yeah, history should begin with ancient history. If you don't start with ancient history, you're not going to even have an idea, especially scientists. If you want to be a scientist, you have to know ancient history.
Well, I tell you the thing I find I'd love to hear all y'all's opinion on this. So one of my personal ambitions in life is to be a modern version of a Renaissance man. So I don't have artistic skill. So from my perspective, it's knowledge, right, about a variety of subjects. And the irony, obviously, is, that used to be the norm, right? It was the objective for a lot of folks to be knowledgeable in a variety of disciplines.
Yeah.
And now it seems like people don't even want to be knowledgeable and even quasi-expert on one topic, let alone multiple. And it's almost viewed as a punishment to learn about something else. And on the flip side, people who do go and search for that knowledge, think about this in the context of things we deal with on YouTube all the time. Like, you don't have a degree in that, therefore you can't have any knowledge. And I'm just like, I'm not following your point here.
Well, that's speaking to that point. Like, it's the weirdest thing that we live in the information age. You can teach yourself anything, but barely anyone takes advantage of it. No one takes advantage of it.
Yeah, we should take a lot more advantage of it for sure.
Well, in Sal's stream tonight, Leo Filius and Ian Chen were talking trash about me and quantum mechanics. Of course, number one, quantum mechanics is not something I talk about a bunch. But the irony for me is that they're talking all this trash to me about not being an expert when Leo Filius has publicly stated that he has done exactly what I have done and taken advantage of Harvard X, Open MIT, Stanford's version of that in his quest for knowledge in terms of physics, while simultaneously insulting me for having done the same and claiming that I couldn't know what the hell I'm talking about and anything else, even though I followed the exact, well, I actually did it before him, but gone down the exact same path. And I'm like, what world do you live in?
Leo said he was a theoretical physicist, but not by trade.
Didn't Leo? He's the one that said that that was something about the universe has different tenses or something like that. At one point, I was like, "What are you talking about?"
He's talking about the A and B theory.
Man.
He's talking about the A and B theory, and all that. Which I get where he's coming from. I've read up on some of that stuff too. But the point being that of all of the people, I'm talking about the irony of all this situation, right? Like, of all people, I personally am the last person who judges somebody's knowledge base on whether or not they have the piece of paper that says they have it. Like, I actually, in many instances, despise the pieces of paper. I mean, as an employer who used to hire people, have universities call him to hire their students. There are certain aspects, and I'm talking about just junk university. I'm talking about a place like Vanderbilt, which is not considered a junk university by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, I've interacted with high-level people in direct business relationships that have all those pieces of paper, and many of them are some of the dumbest individuals and most incompetent fools that I've ever interacted with. in my entire life. And some of the smartest and most influential and innovative people I've ever interacted with have been the ones that didn't have it. Or, hey, they went to college for a little bit and dropped out. Oh, wait, turns out, that's an interesting trend. The richest people on the planet are like that. And yet in the modern era, we act like somehow, unless you have all these qualifications, quote unquote qualifications, you couldn't possibly know anything. And it's just it's ridiculous. I yield.
Yeah, it's crazy that like we emphasize college as like the only way to be successful, and then trick everyone into thinking that they all go to college, amass thousands and thousands of dollars in debt, and then unable to get a job, unable to pay it back, and then hate the system. It's just like, and then want to like completely dismantle it when it was just this cultural issue of putting such an institution on a pedestal in terms of,
That's
success.
why. That's exactly why I became a mechanic. I didn't want to have a huge amount of student debt.
Yeah, I mean, trade schools are the way to go. I mean, you learn your trade right away.
They're punishing people with skills. They're rewarding people that don't have any skills, by forgiving student debt and stuff like that.
Well, here's the irony, though. In the here and now, the people with the skills are actually the ones that are okay.
Yeah.
Because we have a massive electrician, ironworker, pipe fitter, plumber. Like, we have massive shortages of them. Like, for example, so Nashville, where I live, things are weird right now, but the pre-COVID, we bounced back and forth between, it was Nashville and some city in China had the most cranes of any cities on the planet. Okay, there was like one point where there was like, I counted it, there were we actually got to the point where somebody built a website to keep track of where all the cranes were in Nashville. Okay, is that crazy? And I remember just in downtown there were 17. I'm talking about the big ones for building skyscrapers that were set up just in the downtown Nashville area. Okay, and I was talking with some guys, and they were down here from like Michigan and Illinois, Pennsylvania, and they had been recruited to come down to work on these construction projects. They were getting paid $50 an hour plus daily stipend plus room and board because there was such a shortage of their skill sets to work on these giant projects. I mean, think about that. You're getting paid $50 an hour plus room and board plus daily stipend.
Yeah, that's good.
That's you're easily pulling 150 G's right there. Like, easy. And they're working on a construction project. I had a friend who was a lawyer. He had a bunch of the student loan debt, right? He decided he hated being a lawyer, went and became an electrician. And he's a smart guy. I mean, he's turned into a business and stuff, but he makes almost $500,000 a year.
That's exactly what my niece's fiance did. They both went to school, pharmacy tech. They both graduated. That's what she does, but he didn't, wasn't find out after he done. He's like, this is not really what I want to do. So I told him, I said, go into some kind of trade, electrical trade or something. That's what he went into, and man, he's doing very well right now.
Well, and here's the other thing that really irritates me on the pushback against trades. So, case in point, right now in Nashville, Nashville Electric Service has a running ad. They will pay you to come be an electrician apprentice. Pay you $18 an hour, okay, to learn a skill. So you can, and you think about that, like by the time you're done, you're a journeyman, right? And at that point, they're justifying, $28 to $35 an hour, right? So you can come out of this with zero debt. You got paid to learn a skill and have no debt. You have no student loan debt. And now you have the capacity to, like the last study I saw on this, there was like 83,000 currently open electrician jobs in the United States. That's nuts.
Oh,
think about that. And
yeah, my heat and air guy always tells me that, man. He's just like, there's just such a demand. Jobs there are for in heat and air. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's
openings.
Those things are continuing to be exacerbated in the demand because there's fewer and fewer people going into that and more people are retiring. And like same thing in ironworking. Like a gentleman used to do work for me. He passed away, but his son right now is an iron worker, and he's making like 140, 150K a year, and he works 8 months. Like he literally, when he gets to his number, right, of his goal, and sometimes a little bit higher, sometimes a little, just depending on the project he's working on, right? When he gets to that goal, he just stops and goes on vacation for the rest of the year. I mean, like, and then whenever he's ready, it's he calls up the union and like, okay, I'm ready to get back to work, and then okay, and they send him off to XYZ project. I mean, it's crazy.
I got offered a job. My brother-in-law's still in union. I got offered a job over the weekend, and I ain't seen him in a long time, but and I haven't been in. I still pay my dues, everything, but I haven't did any work in like over three and a half, maybe over 4 years, and I can go right back right now and be making pretty good money as a foreman. But I don't think I want to go back in there. If I do, I'll just do it for myself. But yeah, I mean, there's money in that right now. I mean, in trades right now.
Yeah,
which is ironic. They said that the AI and the robots are going to take over all those jobs, but apparently not. Not the electrician, not the plumber, not the air conditioned man.
Yeah, you can't get a robot to go down some of these crawl spaces and stuff like that, or an attic.
Exactly. I was going to say, my uncle retired from the Coast Guard, and he became one of those electricians. It's hard work.
Oh, it is.
Pulling through wires and all kind of stuff.
I helped my electrician, or my heat and air guy. Excuse me. He's been with done stuff for a family for probably 15 years now. But I've helped put in a unit in the house I'm in now, and then my house too, and then my mom's house. So 3 units, and I did the same thing. My plumber I put in finally hooked to city sewer. And I just asked him, I said, because he didn't have a helper. He said, well, I'll come maybe like a couple of months. I don't have a helper. I said, well, I'll help you. I mean, I'm pretty knowledgeable in construction trades and everything. And we did it. We would have done both houses in a day, except we ran into a big vein of quartz rock or granite, excuse me. We had to cut through. It took us a day to cut through. But yeah, I mean, they just can't find help, man. So I don't know why some of these kids don't go into like, vocational trade or something.
There's actually been a study on why that is. And guess what it is? Let's take a wild guess.
I would say it because they stigmatism or something, like they want to like have a title, you know what I mean, a bigger title or something, or that, or they're lazy.
The number one concern for males in relation to going into trades especially at that young age, right? Getting that ass. They have been conditioned, both females and males have been conditioned to view it, and you're kind of on line with that in terms of the stigma, right? That it's an inferior position, you're less intelligent, all those kind of things, right? Even though, here's the irony, here's the
make more money.
Here's the ultimate irony, right? They make more money. However, females have been conditioned to rather date the dude who makes less. Right? Makes less than the tradesman.
Yeah, because you're usually in good shape, and if you're out doing that all the time, trust me, you're in good shape. You know what I mean?
Right. But it's the irony, though. Like the girl would rather date the little corporate type, even if he's making less money and maybe and isn't necessarily in the same physical condition, all that kind of stuff. It's like, think about that from the irony of that, right? You got
it is.
He's more alpha. Theoretically, he's more masculine. Theoretically, at least from an evolutionary perspective, he should be the more attractive potential mate, right?
Well, if you're making more money, you're better off anyway, regardless.
Well, you would think so.
I mean,
right?
hypergamy is a pretty serious issue, though.
Say it again.
I was just going to say hypergamy, like the whole notion of women wanting to go after the guy that's, got more money. I mean, that does kind of like, that kind of trumps the majority of societies across the globe.
Right. But what I'm saying is that it's the antithesis of that.
Yeah.
In this in this modern context. That's why it's like the brainwashing is strong at this point.
and anybody that's listening or just in the general conversation, if you go into that when you're young and like you do that kind of work through your 20s, okay, time you're in your 30s, you got it mastered. You know what I mean? You should, and then you should be able to you should be doing your own business by the time you're in your 30s.
Right.
And
If you wanna make
definitely in the 40s, you should just be showing up, collecting a check. You know what I mean?
Right.
The
If
guy
you want to
that,
make money, you can go into your own business and make money.
my
Have your workers doing it for you, and subbing it out. Go ahead.
was-
Sorry, John.
oh, you're fine. It was so funny. I had to get my dryer fixed recently, and I was having a conversation with the guy that came. He self-employed and all that stuff. And he was talking about his son. We had this exact conversation. So he was trying to, convince his son to come work for him. He's like, man, I'm almost 50. I like teach him, kind of turn things over to him, all this kind of stuff, right? He's like, my son's being an idiot, so I'm like, hey, I'm gonna try and bring him in. Well, his son refuses, right? Goes and no, Dad, I'm not doing this. I'm gonna go get a job. so he goes and get a job at like Hot Top, some freaking store at the mall or whatever, right?
Coffee shop.
So he was like, yeah, man, it was so funny. He was so funny. Of course, my son's making $12 an hour or whatever. And anyway, he's like, he walked past. I was doing my taxes, and he walked past the table, and he saw the number on my tax return, and he was like, "What? Like, how much did you make, Dad? And then he's like, well, I guess I might want to start learning this stuff. And he's like, I told him, nah, I don't need help. I don't need your help. You keep with your job. So he's like, I'm going to make him work for like another 6 months. And then if he wants to, I'll give him another chance to kind of work after he's kind of realized a little bit of this whole, oh, wait a minute, maybe this thing ain't so bad after all.
Yeah, because I've hired family and stuff like that, and it's terrible, man. Because like they'll come on and it's like, oh man, they don't want to do anything because they think they can get by with it. So you have to be really hard on them, man. I understand. I can imagine if it was like father son. I've seen it too many times. That guys like working for my boss or something, then they bring their son in, and it's just like he does nothing, and we all have to like clean up his mess and just. Oh, so many times I've done that.
Man, one of my roommates in college, his father, he was actually Israeli, but he had been an engineer actually on NASA projects when he first came to the States. But then he now owned a machine manufacturing company, and like they both designed and manufactured custom machines for factories. And so we were working on some projects up there in the summertime and such. And he was such an idiot, man. He did not realize how cool it was, but just secondary, like how smart his father was. And like he had some serious stuff he could teach us. So I'm sort of like trying to learn from his dad and like talking to him. He's giving me grief about like sucking up to his father and all this stuff. And I'm like, dude, your dad literally helped design freaking rockets that went to the moon. Okay. Like I'm going to sit here and listen to what he has to say, And
yeah,
it's like, flies
pretty
over.
amazing, actually.
Yeah, it was pretty. I tell you what, that was some pretty interesting conversations with him. Man, look who has showed up. He has finished review for the book club meeting he's got with his discussion for his graduate degree. Emery, welcome to the stream. How are you, my friend? How are your page turning thumbs?
My page turning thumbs are still functional. I do need to go get some more band-aids for all the paper cuts I'm accumulating, but I'm doing pretty good. I figured I could drop in for a little bit tonight. I just got my homework done a little bit ago here, and I figured I could drop in for a little bit. So
welcome, and Sal, welcome back to the stream. You get everything taken care of on your end?
Yep, taken care of. Thanks.
Awesome.
I'm glad I came back because Emery's here.
All right, well, I'm going to go get something to drink. I'm going to put myself on mute. You guys have fun with the conversation. I'll be back in a few.
Yeah, maybe Emery can educate us on something here.
I mean, I'm one of those people that's getting one of those worthless sheets of paper that LPP was talking about. So I don't know about that.
Well, okay. Well, I haven't gone yet. So I just say that stuff in order to lower the self-inflated egos that generally are associated with academic types. And yeah.
But
you're
still,
not wrong. You're not wrong.
But still, we can still learn something specific in a specific field. That might be new,
Yeah, I'll be perfectly honest with you, like, because I have a bit of an obsession with science, just a little bit. And I'd read like lots and lots of scientific papers before I even started grad school. The first, like, some sections of the stuff I've done, it's like, this is stuff I already know because I've read so many papers. But so, I mean, and as I think it was Danny that was saying earlier, he seems to be gone now, but I mean, I was saying earlier that, hey, you can educate yourself on just about anything, and you can. You might need some help, but you can. Now, the only reason I really went for the grad degree is, well, twofold. One, it's the gatekeeper to advancement at my job, and B, it is something that looks better for me later down the road when I have to talk about these kind of apologetics issues. It sounds a lot better to be able to say I have a master's in biology. People, for some reason, are impressed by that. I don't know why. I mean, after listening to Sal talk about the hoax that Bogosian, Lindsay, and Pluckrose pulled off on the gender studies groups, I'm a little, I mean, I knew about that before Sal talked about it, but yeah, I mean, that's just, and the sad thing is you could probably do that with biology and get away with it if you were careful enough. If you knew the field, and you probably could do it.
Biology is the field that has become the high-tech field,
Yeah. And I mean, you probably could get away with it. It would be tough. It would be tougher than doing it in gender studies, because I don't think they do reviews in gender studies. I really don't think they do. But you probably could do it in biology. I'd imagine it would be difficult. You'd have to be an expert. You'd have to be an expert in your field to pull it off, probably. But at that point, why would you do it? But it'd be it's possible potentially. I think, like, some of the stuff I've seen published, I've looked at and gone, oh my word, what on earth is wrong with this paper? How did this get through peer review? What on earth is this mess? And I'll throw an example out there. I had to look at a paper for a class a couple of semesters ago. I don't remember, it was 1 or 2 semesters ago, that was talking about using drones to observe endangered nesting birds. And like the entire paper was one long train wreck. They didn't have a control group, which is, I mean, you don't do an experiment without a control group. I mean, you just don't. Well, you can, but you're not really supposed to. It's one of those things you try to avoid. There was possible that the various groups they picked were being influenced by other groups, and they didn't account for it. I mean, it was a long list of mistake after mistake after mistake, and it got published. And this isn't even like a creation evolution thing. This is just like, this is a terrible paper. This is a legitimately terrible paper, and it got published. And it's one of those things where I sit there and I tear my hair because I look at this and go, I know that you guys know how to write a better paper than this. Where is it? And it comes back to peer review. Peer review, yeah, I don't spend a whole lot of time on social media. Because I find a lot of it to be very toxic. But there's a quote that somebody I follow on Twitter put out today, and it was very accurate. Peer review does not eliminate bias. Bingo. It doesn't. It's a useful tool, and I think that people should encourage other scientists to look at their work and to say, hey, am I doing this right? Did I make any mistakes? That kind of stuff should be encouraged. But unfortunately, the way peer review, it acts as a gatekeeper to ideas rather than as a actual, did you do this right? Did you make any mistakes type of thing? And there have been cases where where papers have been reviewed by other specialists in whatever field it is, and then the paper's been rejected, and then about 3, 4, 5 months later, a paper comes out from what we can only presume is one of the reviewers, which is basically ripped off the paper.
Yeah, believe that.
So, and that's happened. That's not just happened once. That's happened.
And as a quick sidebar, are you guys aware of the rather? Does anyone take a guess on the extremely influential person who has had that direct accusation made about him? And he may be one of the most powerful people in medicine on the planet at the moment. Anyone want to take a guess?
His name wouldn't start with an F, would it?
It would.
Oh, brother, are you serious?
Oh yeah, he has been directly accused of this by the two people who were back in the 80s. They were in charge of the project regarding HIV, and they had a publication ready, a whole deal. Not only did he block them from publishing it, he actually extracted a copy, not for they wouldn't turn over a copy of their research to him. He got it from one of their assistants, gave him a copy of it to review because he was further up the food chain. And then he and another person published a very, very similar paper after he had forbade them from publishing their own work. And they publicly called him out, all this kind of stuff. They got fired. Basically blacklisted. And then there was another person 20 years later who made a very similar accusation in a different instance. And but yeah, the one and only
Danny said let him in.
The Fuhrer himself.
Oh my, that's hilarious.
Well, and
no wonder that man's the highest paid employee in the federal government.
I know, right? Well, and here's the other thing I found very interesting about that was I watched an interview with the main character, but not him, but the other person making the accusation. And I'll just say that my read on her was very wow. And she was talking about how they had she was threatened to be arrested by the FBI. She was charged but never indicted for 6 years. All this stuff, and they basically gave her a gag order. A gag order was issued without her ever being convicted of anything, and it was finally retracted. And then she came out public with the accusations against him, and it's wow, okay, that's fascinating. And it's yeah, she was it's documented that she was the head of she and this other guy were the head of the project back in 1983 or whatever it was. And one of the things she was talking about, I forget the exact details. One of the things she was discussing was how at the moment in time, because their findings didn't end up being published by him for 8 or 9 months after, right? And she was talking about at the time, HIV was relatively contained, and the hotspot in question, I think, was in France or something, and that they had identified this and had made formal they'd had these formal recommendations of basically, hey, we can quash this here, and all that stuff gets kiboshed for 8 or 9 months, and then by the time the research was published, it had spread. There now there were 10 different hotspots around the globe that hadn't been in play prior to. So when you think about that in terms of the global impact that's had over the last 30 years, that was one of the points she was making in the interview I saw. She's she's I'm not suggesting we necessarily could have quashed it back then. There wouldn't have been additional ramifications. However, when I look back at what we had identified, where it was relatively pinned at that moment in time, just that 8 or 9 months could potentially have been a game changer on a global level in terms of its spread. And anyway, enough of all that. Okay, I'm actually going to shut up, let you guys talk. Have fun, guys. And Danny, welcome back to the stream. And we also been joined by the one and only Smokey and Bob. So have fun, guys. I'll be back momentarily.
Hey, guys.
Welcome.
Hello. Again.
I was just talking about you, Danny. I didn't realize you were coming back.
Yeah, no, I had my roommate came in and we had to talk about laws of nature.
Danny, I'll send you an email. We'll have a talk on mathematical Platonism sometime, if that's okay.
For sure, that'd be fun. That sounds fun.
I'm bushed. I got a bail. Smokey, it's great seeing you. Great seeing everyone here. John Maddox.
Good night,
John
Sal. God bless you, brother.
Good
to
night,
see you.
Sal. God bless you, brother.
God bless Sal.
Your mother
Take it
too,
easy,
brother.
Sal.
Thank you, Pigs Can Fly, Emery, Chris Keith, Danny Argata. Man, it's just great to see the whole gang. And for those of you who came out to see my debate, thank you very much, and also to the viewers. So take care and God bless you all. Good night.
Have a great night.
So the
So what
laws
was
of
this?
nature.
Don't everybody talk
What
at
jungle?
once.
Something about the laws of nature.
What about the laws of nature?
Or what was it?
That was Danny that brought that up.
Brought what up? Laws of nature?
Laws of nature, yeah.
Yeah. They're puzzling, but I'm trying to figure it out.
Yeah, what exactly are the laws of nature?
Well,
Are you asking?
There's,
that's a
there's-
long answer, Jungle.
I can think of a lot of laws of nature, but I mean, I'm just wondering
Are you asking about the nature of laws of nature, or like what they are?
the laws, what they are.
Wait, the nature of them, or what they are actually?
What they are actually.
Oh, I don't. That's like a scientific question, isn't it?
What's the
Jungle,
nature
that's
of nature?
Oh my.
Well, what would be the nature? What would be
Argos,
the nature of the laws?
it is 1:30 in the morning. Don't do that to my brain.
What's the nature? What's the nature of the laws of nature? Then we'll go with that.
Are the
Do you know
material
what is biology?
You said the nature of the laws of nature. I said, okay, we'll go with that.
Yeah, but do y'all think there are laws of biology?
There certainly are some. The biology has a few less laws than something like chemistry or physics, but
What's a law of biology?
the law of
Like the
biogenesis.
law of biogenesis.
Start with that one. That's
it's
the one
a
that comes to
low-
mind right off the top of my head. There are other things that are called laws. I'm not so sure whether they're entirely accurately called laws, but they're called laws. So there's various different, depending on what field you're in. You can.
But biology is chemistry.
What was an example? I heard an example. I forgot what y'all said.
I think the law of biogenesis is accurately called a law.
Yeah, no, that one I'd stand on, but the other ones I kind of go, okay,
But
maybe.
but
Don't y'all think is God alive? Like in the same
But-
sense, like a cell's alive or something?
but in chemistry, in biology, there's chemistry, there's nanotechnology, there's a whole bunch of things there's laws governing biology.
I don't
Well, it
think
doesn't
that's
fit
laws
the-
of biology. I think
Um,
I'm
quantum
pretty sure biology
physics,
is pseudoscience.
quantum
I'm not so sure.
physics as well.
I think it's equivocation. Like
No, there's real quantum physics, there's real chemistry, there's real nanotechnology.
oh no, I know, John. I was answering Danny's question about if God is biologically alive, and I was just saying I think it's
Yeah, it is an equivocation, I think. That's why if you think that God is not alive in the same sense as like a cell, then there's no law of biogenesis because life came from intelligence, not other life.
Yeah,
Right.
Oh,
unless
okay.
unless it's another
Danny,
kind of life.
Danny, okay, that's actually a really you're thinking well, and I see. So, but you've made a tiny. I guess I don't know if it's a misrepresentation or just not quite understanding the argument that a creationist puts forward. Basically, we're okay with a one-off fiat creation, and I don't think anybody's who's a creationist is gonna argue against that. If they do, they're not a creationist. But at that same point that God did the fiat creation, we also have God creating the laws of chemistry, of physics, and as we presume, the law of biogenesis. So yes, we do have a one-off event where life came from intelligence, not pre-existing life. You're correct about that.
Exactly.
But the difference between us and the evolutionary perspective on this is we point that, yes, this came specifically from an intelligent mind, a designer, the God, in my case, I'd say the God of the Bible. And we can say, okay, and once he did that, he built the laws of nature in around that life so that we wouldn't have, it's not a repeatable event. It's not an event that could happen again. Or at least wouldn't happen again, except under very special lab circumstances with a lot of very, very smart people working on it. So whereas with the abiogenesis perspective from the evolutionists, it's non-directed, non-intelligent, there's no purpose to it. There's no meaning to it. It just is a byproduct of chemistry. But the problem is the laws of chemistry that we have now, and Sal's much better at this than I am, but because abiogenesis is frankly something that annoys me because it involves chemistry. But the laws of chemistry that we have now do not fit with any currently proposed abiogenesis scenario. And frankly,
the laws of physics, you said?
The laws of chemistry.
Oh, okay.
And frankly, DNA and RNA, which are the molecules that you need to transmit any kind of inheritance, they're incredibly unstable. And by incredibly unstable, I mean if you put them in liquid, they just fall apart. They like break. They just disintegrate. You have to. One of the COVID vaccines, and this is not meant to go down the vaccine trail, but one of the COVID vaccines is an mRNA vaccine.
Right. They have to.
In order to use mRNA, you have to deep freeze it. Like this thing is so cold that like you have to have special storage freezers to freeze this thing to keep it from falling apart. And on a prebiotic Earth, you don't have deep freezers. You don't have the specialized conditions that you need in order to keep it from falling apart if you make it. And that's assuming you can make it, which is another thing that gets into chemistry, and Sal's a lot better at than I am. And of course, he went to bed a bit before we had this conversation. But
chirality, peptide bonds.
Yeah, there are a lot of issues when you go there. Whereas if you appeal to an omnipotent creator, those issues are no longer a problem. Now, I understand that from an atheistic perspective, you don't believe in an omnipotent creator, and okay, that's fine. You don't want to do that. That's fine. But from our perspective, we don't have a problem with God doing a one-off fiat creation event and then setting up the universe to run by orderly natural laws.
But I guess my contention there is presumably he set up the world such that there were like a set number of mountain ranges, right? That the world after creation was such that there'd be a certain number of mountains or mountain ranges. But there's not going to be a law there, despite God setting up the world that way, right?
Well, okay, from a creationist perspective, we agree God created the world in a particular fashion, but it's also been heavily changed since then by various events, including the catastrophic global flood, and if we want to go into some other runoff events from the flood, volcanism, etc. So I don't think there's a law that says we have to have X number of mountain ranges.
I think the point is that we want to differentiate how God set up the world with the sorts of laws that he set up.
Okay, that's fair.
There's lots of laws governing the structure of the earth and how everything's floating, like the earth's crust that we're on. I mean, the land masses that we're on are actually floating on top, and then the other ones are sinking, the oceans and stuff. So there's a lot of laws governing that as well. Not to mention the internal mechanisms of the earth too.
Hey, Emery, there was some things that I'll just ask the question. Are you young Earth?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Yes. I thought something you said made me think that maybe you weren't.
No, I'm very much young Earth, and if I said something that didn't sound like it, I apologize. It's also 1:30 in the morning, and I've been working on homework most of the night, so
it's fine. I have a second cousin that is not young Earth, but it's difficult to argue with her because she just thinks that, I mean, one, she allegorizes Genesis, obviously, and then she how can you can't show them that evolution is impossible because she'll just say God did it.
and to a certain extent that it is difficult in that sense. But the way generally, if the person is a committed Christian, I find that the best way to handle that is to deal with a theology, because it comes down to starting points, really.
Death before sin.
Death before sin is a very, very good point to make, and now it depends on how orthodox this person is in their Christian beliefs, because there are people who are more than happy to accept that, and most of them are theistic evolutionists, etc. But a lot of people who are theistic evolutionists haven't actually ever really thought through the process. Like the people with name value, the Francis Collinses and the Biologos and so on of the world, they've thought through it, or at least some of them have, and they've come up with some very, very bad solutions to it. I mean, at one point, Biologos had an article on their website that actually said, well, if Jesus made some mistakes as a human being, well, that's not a big deal.
Whoa. One of the most convincing things I think you could tell her is, what do you think Jesus believed? That's what convinced me, really.
Yeah, and I think, Danny, I think that's a good point. If you go to the New Testament, you see when Jesus refers to Genesis, it's always in a historical sense. Like he talks about Adam and Eve as real people. He talks about the flood as a real event. He talks about, he quotes Genesis 1 when he talks about what the definition of marriage. So it's very, I'll let you talk in a second, Vinny, I'm sorry. And so it's very difficult for me, and this was before I got into the sciences. My primary objection to theistic evolution was theological, because I went, well, I can't buy that, because it doesn't line up with theology of the Bible. And I think that's probably if someone is actually serious about serving God and they're actually serious about their Christianity, the theological argument is the best way to get to it.
Yeah, look, the reason why I didn't really care about the whole young Earth stuff when I was a Christian and the old Earth stuff is because I just was fine with whatever Jesus believed, and it seemed likely that he did hold to young Earth. And if Jesus was God, then there's just something wrong with the accounts that the scientists and historians are giving, right? Despite they could give me any reason, right? And it doesn't matter, right? The fact is that the confidence that I had in Jesus was just higher, and that was the end of the story for me.
Yeah. And Danny, I'll shut up in a second here, but I just want to throw something out there. You are that thought process that you displayed is much more consistent and much more actually in line with Orthodox Christianity than a lot of leading Christian apologists. And I think I shared this in one of the other LPP streams, but William Lane Craig essentially came out and said, well, hey, we can just, follow the science, and if the science contradicts the Bible, we'll just jump in on the science and go with that.
Well, ironically, I got that sentiment from William Lane Craig. He says something very similar, although he's old Earth. He just,
he's TE now. He's moved into the TE position now.
Oh, okay. Well, the point is that it wasn't in the context of a young Earth versus old Earth debate. Mm-hmm. It was, how do we regard the laws and the just the general other claims that are made outside of Genesis? And you can really get a good glimpse of, you can get a good interpretation based on how the Jews at Jesus might have interpreted it, right? Like you would just appeal to their interpretation or something like that. And so I just apply that to the young Earth stuff, and I just stopped caring about it completely.
Well, it has to include the global flood, which buried all the fossils. And if you can understand that the fossils are the result of the flood, then you're a good way along in what the facts are.
Argos, I think you wanted to say something. I apologize. I cut you off over here.
Oh, I don't know. It's fine. I think coal is actually a really strong evidence of the flood.
Yeah.
Where'd all this biological matter come from that didn't rot before it was covered with tons of rock that could compress it?
Yeah. Yeah, all the layers, the coal, everything. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's something.
Well, there's also evidence of materials that were built before the flood that were encapsulated within the coal. So the
weird alloys,
cast iron bell.
Yeah,
I've heard that. I I haven't seen any like hard documentation on it, but I've heard that that's the thing. I just haven't looked it up. Geology is not my strong suit. I stick to biology.
Kent Hovind has, I don't know if he still has the thing. I think he may have lost it when they put him in prison.
The hammer.
And then he lost his stuff. Yeah, it was a hammer that was in coal.
They confiscated it.
Yeah, they
He had a hammer and a bell, I believe.
But
he was doing too well, and the government took him down.
But the problem is that there's too much bias in the scientific studies, so that you can't even trust them being dependable as far as their findings are concerned. You know, they could find something and throw it in the creek.
Oh, okay, okay. You're onto something, but you also need to take something else into account. Yeah, when you read their conclusions, yeah, they're going to make those fit the narrative, but they have to report their data honestly, or at least they're supposed. Most of the time they do. Most of the time they do, because there's big time consequences for them not doing it.
Yeah.
Like if you aren't reporting if you get caught fabricating data, like you will lose your professorship. You will be booted out. You will never speak at a conference again. You will your entire academic life will collapse. You are better off sleeping with a student than you are fabricating data, because and that's terrible. But that it is much worse if you fabricate data. So a lot of times what you have to do is you can read the abstract and you can read the conclusions and okay, fine, whatever. But you need to actually read the rest of the paper and see what they say, because there was a paper, I don't know, a year or two ago that came out. I'm not an expert on hominid fossils, but they were talking about a find of some hominid fossils, and they spent the entire paper talking about them as Australopithecine over and over and over. The entire paper was Australopithecine, and then you got to the conclusion and said, so we think that these fossils are Homo. And I just
wow.
How do you? But I mean, narrative. It's all about the conclusion, and the abstract and the introduction have to protect the narrative. In the middle, they can tell the truth to their scientific colleagues, but at the end of the beginning, which is what people are going to report on, because that's the sections that the pop sci writers can actually understand, most of them, they report stuff that is going to suit the preferred narrative, and it's unfortunate. And then the pop sci writers just distort it even further. It's really, really bad how some bad some of this pop sci stuff is. But so like I can sit here and I can read an evolutionary paper and I'll get something out of it, but you're probably going to have to reinterpret the results. Every so often you don't have to. Like the dinosaur soft tissue, when that came out, we didn't have to reinterpret those results. We can just point and go, hey guys, that shouldn't be there. If those things are as old as you're telling me they are, that shouldn't be there. And they knew that too, which is why they had such an issue with it. But some stuff, a lot of stuff, you're just going to have to sit there and go, okay.
But even that,
the data.
Even that, they were saying like, this appears to be a blood cell. This appears to be a vein. This appears to be.
I know.
But we're not sure. We're not really sure about it. But it looks like a cell with philopodia. You know, come on.
Yeah. Yep. I know.
Hey, Emery,
It's still the best explanation that it was iron, that like a high concentration of iron or something.
That was the last explanation I heard.
No, iron is not a good explanation at all, because for her to get it out.
I know it's bad. I was wondering if it's the best they had.
No, there is an argument against it, a really good argument, because iron is destructive to certain parts of collagen, or actual collagen itself, and it would break down collagen, or you'd see evidence in the collagen if there was iron present, and you don't see that evidence in the collagen, right? It breaks it down or does something to it, changes its structure in a certain way that you can see it very clearly. So no iron, and also she would have had to use centrifuges, and she actually did use centrifuges and chemicals to strip away to kill certain the coagulating parts of the blood, because that would have bound up the iron inside of the hemoglobin. and all sorts of chemicals and centrifuges, and you don't find that stuff in nature, and iron is very easily debunked.
Awesome.
Yeah. Last I heard, that was sort of the explanation. I think she's come out with a more recent one than that, which involves like some kind of cross-linking between molecules and something.
That's what I'm talking about. And the molecule and the iron molecules, by the way, are way too large to affect this cross-linking. They're actually larger than the molecule itself, so they'd have to be smaller. The actual molecule sizes, when they think they're too large. I've got a scientist sitting down explaining the whole thing in great detail from beginning to end on a video. If you want
he's
to see
actually
it.
exactly right. If you go to Mark Armitage's, he's got an older video too, where he just destroys it, man, hard.
Absolutely annihilates it. Absolutely,
I mean, you'll watch it, you'll be like, just
and you can't have iron.
You'll be like, no way.
Yeah, and you can't have iron because it destroys collagen. Basically, that's basically what it does, is destroy collagen. So why is the collagen unaffected?
And you wouldn't have that much
in the area.
Like you said.
And also, and wait a minute, Mark Armitage has also found at the end, as in every blood vessel, there's valves. And at the end of every blood vessel, there's these valves. Now, these valves, as your blood pumps through your body, they stop the blood coming back again. So it only goes one way. And they're microscopic. They're really, really tiny. And he's actually got these valves that when the animal died, there's these little bacteria inside alive inside the valve. And he said they couldn't get in or out. They reactivated when we redid the cell. And also the bio slime stuff. Biofilm is what bacteria eat and crap out their bums. So they're not going to eat a blood vessel, a valve, and crap out a blood vessel valve. You know what I mean? So all of their explanations are just absolute garbage.
They tried that
garbage.
first. The first couple of years they tried that. They're just like, they were a hammer and a herd. They didn't want to accept it. Then when they finally had to accept it because it was repeated, you know what I mean? And then that's when, she spent the time and went, like you said, to the iron preservation method or hypothesis, excuse me. But you pretty much nailed most of the things, like we should use a centrifuge and the coagulants and then
they do see bones that have iron, that have had natural iron in them, and they do see the what it does to collagen. So they know what iron does to collagen. You know what I mean? So it's not like a big secret, like, ooh, maybe it's a hypothesis and iron does this and there's a bit of enough evidence to make it a theory. No, they know exactly what it does. It's repeatable, testable in labs all over the world. So,
also, all she did was show that it could do it for like 2 years. And we can get things to, stabilize. I mean, to stay in like formaldehyde, but you're talking like 65 million years, like when. They're finding these bones and like broken and with the roots coming through them, and this shouldn't be there, man. And
also, okay, and think about this just quickly. Sorry to cut you off, man, but the Neanderthal skulls, 70% of Neanderthal skulls are unfossilized, like original unfossilized bone, 70%. And yet, unless bone becomes permineralized or has some sort of liquid with minerals flowing into it, and it becomes permineralized, some sort of permineralization, it cracks apart and breaks down into dust within 100 years. So even from a young Earth perspective, the fact that those bones are still there, even thousands of years later, is just mind-blowing, is how they can still be there. So, you know what I mean? And when you go to 250,000 years, it's like, what?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like,
there's
problems, man. There's big problems.
I wonder if you could take like modern day humans and grab like a random sample of 10,000 corpses and clean their skulls and then compare them and come up with an evolutionary model.
Didn't they do that already with the pygmies and the Aborigines?
At one point, that actually was a thing. Like, they compared skulls to try and establish an evolutionary tree. They actually did that.
Aboriginals got weak chins and heavy brows.
Yeah, I mean, and they tried to use like skull measurements and like cranial capacity to establish, who was the most advanced. Yeah, they tried that. It failed.
Neanderthals had weak chins and heavy brows. And they found a Neanderthal. Yes, sorry.
Well, I'll tell you
good, Jason. Sorry about that.
I'll tell you this much.
Right.
Now that I've started shaving my head, I've actually started paying attention to other shaved head people. And I'll tell you this much. The point you were making about doing a study and whatnot. If you just pay attention and just observe, you will rapidly realize that the potential dramatic variation in skull shape in the average human is mind-bending when you actually start to really pay attention to it. I'm sitting there because I'm an analyzer.
Yeah,
right?
I've noticed that too.
I've got a weird spot, like a weird flat spot on my head. Right?
Yeah, I've noticed that too. Mine is usually bigger than everyone else's.
I can see that.
I'm just kidding. It was a joke.
I know. The point I'm making is so there's so many very different skull shapes. I mean, it just kind of goes back to the whole running component we talk about in terms of phenotypic plasticity. But in if we didn't know what a Chihuahua and a Great Dane were, and you had two skeletons next to each other, would we actually be able to know which one was which in terms of did they evolve from which one evolved from which one? And same thing on this whole skull thing. I'm on Neanderthals versus Homo erectus and Sapien and such and so on and so forth. If we're talking about skulls, folks, we're talking about skulls.
Yeah, I mean, Great Danes obviously.
Did you get anything in your news feed here the last couple day or two where they're showing they've got more evidence that they interbred with Homo sapiens? So we've been saying it for a long time ago. They or Standing for Truth's been talking about them interbreeding themselves out, and that's
you're talking about Neanderthals, Chris.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Yeah, I saw that. That's been in the news. And the title of one article I saw was absolutely hilarious. Is it more evidence that Neanderthals merged with humans rather than going extinct? And I'm sitting here going, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah.
We have been saying
no, Neanderthals actually did. They're finding up to 20% Neanderthal DNA in humans. They're finding in people alive today up to 20% Neanderthal DNA in people alive today.
If you wait long enough, you'll be vindicated.
That's another thing. How do they have Neanderthal DNA? But they were
because we're 99.7% similar.
Well,
and we could interbreed. They know now from the DNA that we could interbreed. They were just another human. We could interbreed with them. Aboriginals of today have very weak chins and very heavy brows. I've got photos of Aboriginals that blow your mind. That look, you'd say that was if you saw that skull outside of that live Aboriginals with the skin on, you would say, "Ooh, that looks like a Neanderthal. That looks a lot like a Neanderthal." They're heavy. They've got people today like that. And they were human. They were just human. They know that now. They know Denisovan were human. They know Denisovan and Neanderthal could crossbreed now. And you won't find many. I don't think you'll find any evolutionists. And if there are some, they're idiots that say that there might be some on the fringes. But I'd say 99% of would say that they could interbreed with each other, even evolutionist scientists.
Well,
because they're human.
Would say it.
Well, and let's just be blunt, folks. If we took the point that Jason was making, if you take the time to be a remote people watcher for a very short period of time in a large group of people, you could select out individuals that you could hypothetically put into a subset, the potential variation. I mean, just think about this for a second. You get
some big dome people.
Well, I'm saying let's use some famous people, right? Tom Brady, okay, 6'5", freaking ridiculous jaw, right? The strong forehead, all that stuff, right? He's good looking dude, right? And then you get the deformed guy with weak chin and is 5'1" and little shriveled up guy, right?
Stephen Hawking. No.
Well, let's go with he's passed away now, but let's go with Mini Me from Austin Powers, right?
Yeah.
I bet money that you could make a very, very strong case if all you had was their skulls, that they were two completely different species.
Oh, yeah, they would.
Right.
Then if you had the full skeleton, like you've got Mini Me and Tom Brady.
They probably think he's a child.
The dude was 2 feet tall. No, yeah, but his arms would be different than a normal child.
True.
The ratio, the skull shape, I mean, all sorts of stuff. There'd be very significant differences. I'm talking
That's
about,
why DNA is so
and then you got the 6'5" guy, or take it another level. Go Shaquille O'Neal versus Mini Me. Okay, Vernon Troyer. Let's think about this from a rational perspective. Let's put those two skeletons next to each other that you dug out of the dirt. Oh wait, you don't have the whole skeleton. You've only got parts of it. And now you're going to make this extrapolation that it's like, well, did Shaquille O'Neal evolve from Mini Me?
And it's crushed.
I mean, which one was it? I mean, this is what blows my mind in relation to all the different things that we are now learning about the potential for phenotypic plasticity. And I'm like, so we know this? We recognize this. We observe this in real time. And just as humans, we see this on I tell you what, I've actually been paying attention to this much more. I am 6'1", 6'2" with my shoes on. I was in Costco earlier today. And I was walking through, and there was a group of ladies. They were probably all like under 5 feet, right? And I'm standing next to them. And I end up helping these ladies like pick something off of a shelf, which is kind of funny. But I was thinking about this. I'm like, I literally tower over these women, right? Like, just I'm more than head and shoulders taller than these ladies. And then a woman walked past me that was taller than me. And I was struck by this, right? Like, I'm in the produce aisle, and then I turn around, and there's a woman that I'm looking, not just like as tall, I'm like making eye contact with. I'm talking. I'm looking up at this woman, okay, and she wasn't wearing heels, she was wearing flats, okay, and I'm looking up at this woman, and for guys, I mean, you think about that, like, if you're over 6 feet and you're looking up at a woman, that's not common, right?
That's one big. No, I'm just kidding.
You're in no way, shape, form, or fashion are you used to that.
Anytime a woman is larger than me, I was like, it's kind of strange,
Yeah, you recognize it. But my point is, like, I kind of thought, in the context of things that we discuss on a regular basis, this kind of stuff strikes me even more now than it used to. And I'm like, I kind of look back over, and I'm like, so around the corner is a group of ladies who don't even come up to the middle of my chest. And then on the other side of this aisle is a woman who is, half a head taller than me. And I mean, that's staggering difference.
All you're going to have to work with is maybe a femur, maybe a couple of toe bones, some finger bones, some teeth, and part of a skull.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, like this Neanderthal stuff, they're talking about like a tooth or something, and that's where they're getting their evidence or whatever. But I'm about to bounce out here. I just wanted to say one thing and point to like, even on the dinosaurs, what makes me so mad about that is like it doesn't we're not necessarily even saying that like dinosaurs it proves like creationism or anything like that, but like it just strongly suggests that at least some dinosaurs live longer than what they possibly thought, but they won't even entertain that idea, and that's what really makes me mad about the whole thing. But
we know their age anyway. We know it only goes back 5,000 years anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we got the fossil records.
I mean, there's no doubt about it. That's
some of the proteins they're finding in the dinosaur bones and stuff like that, they can't even find they don't even exist in bacteria. So there can't be bacterial contamination. And they've isolated these things with dyes. So they can put a dye in to show whether it's old dead material or recently dead material. So they can see whether it's contamination. So dyes have proven beyond a shadow of a doubt, and dyes and mass spectrometry and stuff like this proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that these proteins are original proteins as well. So
But
you got
there's
that problem of
no
very
money. There's no
short-lived.
money in grants to go to find out that they're young. You know what I mean? Or they survived
Yeah.
into modern or like modern
Like,
age
yeah,
up to it lasts 100,000 to a million years. But I got to run, guys. Hope you all have a good night. Thanks for having me and John. And I'll listen. I'm gonna listen as I go into REM sleep. Good night, God bless.
You know, speaking of REM sleep,
God bless.
Speaking of REM sleep, I think that Smokey was joking about he had tuned into this stream because he had run out of Ambien. And since he's come on, he hasn't said a word. So I'm really wondering if we managed to cause Smokey Saint to pass out. So Smokey,
he's still active in the comments.
are you conscious? Are you
I
conscious?
am. I've been talking in the comments section. Yeah, it's just I realize that when you're like kind of like an old Earth leaning person, you walk into a room of young Earthers that's kind of taking the shape of an echo chamber. Coming up with an opinion is usually detrimental. So I just figured I'd just sit and listen for a bit.
Hold on, hang on. Did I just hang on. Ladies and gentlemen, I think I just heard Smokey Saint be afraid of controversy.
Oh, that's what it is.
I mean, I don't even know how to address this right now.
That's not a straw man.
Because Smokey has kind of branded himself as the guy who embraces controversy, who accepts it. He will go alone into the belly of the beast. He will jump into the lion's den to stand by Daniel. And then, in the context of debate of old Earth versus young Earth, he will not even embrace the controversy or the potential debate.
Man, it's 11 o'clock at night, and I've been streaming like a chunk of this day. Like, we would get into like an old Earth fight this late at night with a room full of yeks. I don't think that sounds like a good idea.
I mean, you know, Smokey.
Remember what happened? By the way, remember what happened the last time I had a yak fight on your channel? You remember how well that went?
Is this from like months ago?
Oh yes.
Yeah, that was a dumpster fire.
Yes, it was. Yeah, so I'm just not trying to bring up, you know. I'm just not trying to light the dumpster in the Christian rooms, I guess, as much, you know, at least trying.
Well, that's fair. That's fair.
Well, what do you do with the verse that says that through one man sin entered the world and death?
Before you start fighting over that, I'm going to say my good nights because it's 2 a.m. my time, and I do have to work in the morning.
So. All right, Emery. You have a good day, man.
Have a wonderful
night, Emery.
Good
I don't want to fight. I was just, I mean, I think it's one of the stronger verses.
Yeah, is it human death or all death? Yeah,
well, I mean, it doesn't specify.
Exactly. It doesn't specify. In fact, a lot of these arguments come from the failure of specification. In fact, where the Bible tends to leave things into mystery or incredulity, there's certain people that will tend to come in and attempt to claim specificity. I actually, while I lean old Earth, honestly state and do reiterate multiple times, I don't really give a flying fornicated crap which one is actually true. I just accept the truth of the Bible. And if there's nuances and mysteries inside, I try to leave that where it belongs, where God has placed it.
Y'all should train me in being a young Earth creationist so I can debate with y'all like in some stream that some stream doesn't know me, and I'll defend it, guys. I'll defend it for you.
So you know what I've come to realize about Danny Boy is actually can't call him Danny Boy because I use that as an insult towards Dr. Cardinal. So I retract. No, that's Dr. Danny Boy. I can call him Danny Boy. Anyway, one of my things I really enjoy about interactions with Danny is he actually enjoys playing the devil's advocate, but not letting people know he's playing the devil's advocate. It's hilarious.
Well, I do too.
We should challenge some atheists and go on a debate for them, and it'd be funny.
Can I ask Jason a quick question? Because I had actually been talking to a couple of the atheists about the soft tissue. Because it's one of the things that I've been kind of like even struggling about in terms of like, because I lean old Earth, but then when everyone's talking about the soft tissue, I'm kind of like, oh yeah. So I've been, trying to gather more information and ask some people about it, like here and there on both sides of the aisle.
Well, in the side chat, there's a link.
No, I saw. Yeah, no, I think I think you sent me that link before, actually, too.
You have, yeah.
It's but anyway, like the thing that you were saying, which I agree with you in the idea of like, oh, well, the bacteria don't chew up these blood vessels and then spit out blood vessels. Like the fact that the structures, seem to remain, is exactly where it kind of leads you to believe it's like
they don't seem to. They are the actual structures. They can see it clear as day.
Well, I found an article that says that that's not quite the case. That it seems that they're not the original proteins. They're actually polymers of the proteins. And it's something that happens actually in regular food science, where
because the
go ahead.
Go on.
No, I mean I'm just saying like there's two different polymers that form, in the breakdown, which is why like the actual like soft tissue won't succeed for gene sequencing, but we're able to like pick up and notice the structures because the polymers, which have formed and taken over, and the polymers last for ages, where the soft tissue itself won't.
No, I'll tell you, they're finding the proteins. They're finding proteins in these things that they prove came.
No, but that's what I'm saying. The polymers are proteins. The polymers
yes, but no, these are. Yeah, no. I understand. Look, give me that article. I want to read it, and I'll totally smash it and debunk it.
Right, hold on.
I'll do a write up on it.
Hold on, 1 sec. I'll pull it up. No, I'd be happy to see your write up too here.
I was listening to a radio show, probably like a year back or something, and they had called the museum or whatever that had they had the dinosaur, the T-Rex bone, and they offered $10,000 to carbon date it, and the guy just basically said, he literally said, "You guys are young Earth creationists, aren't you? I don't want to give you that."
They refused on air to do the carbon dating.
And his excuse was, "You are young Earth creationists, and I don't want to give you the ammo." That was his response.
I mean, well, like I said before, I mean, I don't have like a huge dog in the fight. Like if I found out tomorrow, like undeniable evidence to me that the Earth is young, it's not like it would be cataclysmic to me. And like the same way on the other side with old Earth, like neither would be, like spiritually or personally cataclysmic to me. So it's kind of one of these things where I don't really have a dog in this fight, I guess, per se, or at least not personally. I don't,
I mean, I think from my experience, your forte is the argument for morality.
Sure. Yeah. That's kind of yeah. I mean, I focus a lot on the.
What if you found out that it wasn't old Earth or young Earth, but it was Middle Earth?
Well, that might destroy my theology. Yeah, I mean, if prophets and dwarves started popping up, I might have an issue there. I don't know.
I knew
we call that the gap theory.
I always knew that. I always knew that Sauron was the true. The
5,000 years.
No, LPP. Sauron is the Antichrist.
Yeah, well, true. Okay, so in a sidebar,
I mean, Agatha even knows I was trying to like steel man, and even though I don't believe what he believes, I was even kind of like trying to steel man him the other night in David Neff's show. Like, I mean, I wasn't like, again, I don't have like a big like stern position on this.
So speaking of the Neff dumpster fire,
was it a dumpster fire? I don't think it was a dumpster fire.
Dude, you literally published a clip today of him getting kincaded with Joker face.
Wait, what? Stream is not a dumpster fire, LPP.
Say again?
That stream isn't a dumpster fire. Like every stream is a dumpster.
Well, LPPs aren't. LPPs put me to sleep. That's why I tune into him when I went on Andy.
Are you talking about a stream that
he's mocking you, LPP?
Oh, I know. But it's part of the reason they put him to sleep is because he refuses to open his mind enough to comprehend the underlying principles of existence.
Yeah,
But
and the pressure of thinking too hard makes him pass out.
Exactly. Well, and these days, Smokey likes to debate vegans and such.
I'm
So
just
it's much more important focus.
You know what,
But,
dude? I take what I can get. You know what was the last debater you debated with 400,000 subs, bro? Come on.
I mean, hey, congratulations.
Yeah.
But hey, that debate didn't get very many people watching because it was freaking on veganism. I mean, whatever.
Yeah, that's true.
But
Yeah,
all
that's
those,
true.
in all seriousness, though, this applies to what we're talking about now with the young tissue and such. Did you happen to watch my stream with Dr. James Carter and Sal on the racemization dating problem?
Probably not. Or even if I did, the likelihood of me remembering the data in that is probably slim to none. So
okay, so I know you know what the chirality problem is, right?
yes, of course.
Okay,
Yeah.
so the racemization is like things.
Good night, guys.
You leaving,
Bye,
Danny?
Danny.
No,
Yeah, I
God
got
bless.
work tomorrow. I'm
Oh, yeah,
too
you got
tired.
that's right. Well, appreciate
Yeah,
you.
you
You have a good one.
freaking pussy. All right, whatever, man. Yeah, go back to sleep.
Actually, it is getting late. We need to go to bed soon. Okay. So the racemization is where things like return back to like 50-50, right? Of left and right-handed. That's just the natural thing that's going to happen, right? Over time, everything will ultimately end up back to 50-50 split, right?
Right.
So if something is millions of years old, if there's even anything left, it sure as hell should be racemization should have occurred. Okay.
If it stays organic, I completely agree with you. Yes. I mean, if it stays like purely in its original.
If it hasn't broken down, I mean, it should be racemized, right?
Well, or changed form, or polymerized, or any of the other things that tends to be a preservation component. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, if that's happened, then you don't have like the proteins aren't there. Like,
the proteins are there. It's just they're polymer proteins. They're not like here again. It's like actually just that one article like kind of like pulls out exactly what I was talking about the polymers, like because that's because like it's the thing is they mimic proteins.
I'll research it, John.
They look like was the amino acids themselves racematized.
They have to be left-handed to be proteins.
Right. So,
About a week.
But Smokey,
within a week.
Smokey, what I'm saying is, it doesn't matter if they're still there. Okay.
Right.
They can still be there, but if the racemization has happened, then you can measure the age. Okay. And anyway, long story. If the ratios are in play, very long story short, what they've been discovering is things that are supposedly millions and millions of years old, right?
Mm-hmm.
But have not yet reached the 50-50 racemization level. Okay. So that means that not enough time has passed for this to have achieved that level. But we know that it's not mathematically possible based on the known data, right?
You remember the time, John? For 50-50?
There was a few different like variations. I'll have to watch stream again. But the point is that in a lab, you can't expect it to last very long, right? In the refrigerator, it wouldn't last very long. And we're finding things in fossils, quote unquote, and all these things that are supposedly in multi-million-year-old rock layers and such that have not yet undergone full racemization. So if that is the case, how the hell is it in something that is being claimed to be 100 million years old? When everything we know about this says that, we're talking max 10, 15,000 years before this would reach the 50-50 level. And if it gets hotter, it actually gets accelerated. Like 1 degree, that has been shown in the lab, like 1 degree temperature change can speed up the racemization by like 20%. So it's not that you're like, if it gets warmer, it goes faster, right? So anyway, the point being, I'm sure you probably follow the logic here of if this is true, then even if you can't get 100% accurate dates because of the potential variations, right? Because, known like temperature variations and such, it doesn't matter. Even if you have some variation, there's no way it could be millions of years old. Does that make sense?
Exactly.
Aliens.
Yep.
So anyway, I thought that was a very fascinating conundrum, and Sal and James kind of went through some papers. It's kind of ironic. This whole problem was something that they had both been thinking about for like 15 years, and they pulled up some papers from like 30 years ago. They were basically the last research that was done on this from like 30 years ago. They found this stuff. They're like reading the paper and showing how like the problems that were raised, the conundrums. They're looking at the data from like secular sources, right? And then the conundrum was postulated, and then basically no further research was done for like the last 30 years.
That's
like Amy Russell says once it hits 50-50, it's stable, no matter how long.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you haven't reached that, like once you hit that point, you wouldn't be able to measure it, right? Necessarily. But if you haven't gotten to that point, then it can be no more than X years old, right? Or within a reasonable range. But the thing is, like, even if the range is 100,000 years, who gives a crap, right?
We're talking millions.
Like, let's be generous.
Exactly.
Let's say it could potentially be 1 million years old. Whatever. Who cares? You're claiming that this was in a 65 million year old rock layer. So, and we have a non-racemized substance here.
Smokey wants to defend, but he's in backstage.
Huh? Oh.
right. So it wasn't, which
Sorry,
is
I didn't
annoying.
realize you
I
dropped
don't
out.
know why I got booted there. I don't know why that happened.
It's because you changed your icon.
Earlier, you kept dropping. I wasn't doing anything. You kept dropping in and coming back on the screen, and I was wondering what was going on there. Yeah,
Oh,
it happened
weird.
like 10 times.
Yeah,
I
it's
was like,
happened on my side too.
Oh, you know what?
Yes.
It's probably because I was opening up the other window. I'm on my phone, and I was opening up the other window, so that's probably why.
Yes, that happens with StreamYard. If you drop the browser down because they don't have an app, if they had a dedicated app on the Android market, you'd be able to drop the app down and then go to another app or a browser and do something else.
Well,
and it wouldn't
sometimes
drop out. But with StreamYards, it drops out. Yeah, sometimes it does, but most of the time it'll boot you within at least, like if you're not back within about at least, I wouldn't go longer than a minute or maybe a minute and a half, or at the most just a minute, and get back quickly, and then go have another look and then get back again, just to keep it from dropping out. It's a real pain in the neck.
I appreciate what John said before, but like instead of like really going into like the whole minutia thing, because again it's late and stuff like that, like going into the AGEs and the ALEs or whatever it is, because I haven't looked into it all that much just yet. Like this is still the thing where I've been trying to figure it out myself. But like, does this at least? Let me ask the Occam's razor question, because like this is the one that I think is kind of like core to it at the gut. So this chick that discovered this, soft tissue stuff, right?
Mary Schweitzer.
Yeah, that one. All right, so she's a old Earth creationist, right? Like she is actually a theist, but she believes in old Earth. So like why wasn't this evidence convincing to her? Like I wonder, does like anyone like kind of ask? Like you think like of all the people that would probably be like, like I don't know, maybe like forefront of the situation of like, hey, I discovered this stuff. And oh yeah, I'm an old Earth creationist, but holy crap, there's
Well, I think she kind of was at the beginning, and then there was
jobs on the line.
There was such a like full scale assault on her professionally that because she's on video talking about how like I don't know how this is, right? Like the whole point you're making of not necessarily from like the spiritual or the like religious standpoint, but like the I don't know, it looks young. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, right? Like she's on camera taking that position. And then there was such backlash that it was basically all retracted. And
but she personally doesn't like hold like, I mean, when she's come out and said like her position, like the way that she holds it, like she hasn't like presented like, oh well, this is convincing to me. I think is like that I mean, not like on the professional level, and that's a whole other thing. But
what I heard her say was that, so when she was giving her testimony, she said that she saw it and she said, this is impossible, run the test again.
Right. Well,
Yeah,
and
but
that's what I'm
with
saying. Like, I feel like since then, like it's been nothing but tests, like
but
being
they've
run.
had her on streams, and she specifically states that she's believes in old Earth.
Well, see, that's all my point. I'm not like trying to make a huge thing of it, but like I'm just talking on like an existential level. Like if you have someone who's a scientist and like they're already theist, like they're already Christian theist or whatever, like and like they're looking through the sciences and the evidences and like well what is the reconciliation of the Bible and scripture, and like they come across this, which you think would be like, well, here's a really good case for me to justify believing in because here's the thing, and this is why I'm saying it. I'm not trying to like be a dick about it, but like I'm saying like what I see is like I see a lot of young earthers that treat this like the holy grail of like young earth evidence, and yet the person that discovered it doesn't seem to treat it like that. And I guess I'm just wondering if there's any like philosophical connection there in our minds about that.
I think it's spiritual deception.
So I think the reason that she's not convinced directly probably has to do with the geology of it. Not to say that that's like 100% accurate or anything like that, but she probably has faith that they are dating these rocks, accurately, and maybe that's the reason why. But aside from that, I mean, I can't really imagine anything that's solid evidence against it.
Well, I think you have to look at it from multiple facets. So number one, her pre-existing worldview, right? Number two, you've got to consider does she even want to address it, right? Due to all the negativity, there's that. The third piece I would say is, and I tell you what I'm about to say. I've been real.
But Maddox, hold on though, real
quick.
Hang on.
Let me make one point. Then the final piece of this, for me anyway, and the further I dive into not just this particular subject, but other things in general, right? I am becoming more and more convinced that professional academics are so hyper specialized in their field that they cannot see the forest for the trees when something that in their field contradicts something. They think that everybody else who's also an expert in whatever the other field is must have already solved that problem, and they just take it at face value.
Yeah.
And they don't. I mean, it really fascinates me how many folks I've had. You have these conversations I have with people, and then it's like, well, what do you mean you don't know that? You're sitting here lording your PhD or your master's or whatever over me, but you don't understand. You don't know the argument. Like, you don't understand this XYZ piece of what I'm talking about, and we're talking about your your theoretical area of expertise, and you don't even know about this. Like, case in point, this stupid, I've been asking all these idiots that have been talking such trash lately. Like, which came first, the clamp loader, or the polymerase? Which one came first? And several PhDs haven't even known what the hell I'm talking about. Okay? And these three things I just listed off, of course they know about polymerase, but they don't know what most of them know about clamp or clamp loader. Those two factors are like essentials. The polymerase does not remain on the freaking DNA chain or strand unless it has the freaking clamp, period. It flies off, literally. And these idiots who are freaking PhDs, supposedly in this area of expertise, they don't even know what the hell I'm talking about. Because why? They're hyper-focused on one of the other bazillion different things that are happening in a biological system, right? I'm just using this example. But this same concept applies to academia at large, and they just accept like, oh, so and so, the other guys got this figured out already, and I think that's why they don't challenge.
Always somebody else has
status quo.
it figured out.
Anyway, I yield.
I was just sorry. I'm just saying it's always they say somebody else has it. They've got the evidence. I don't.
Yeah. And it's like the court systems. There's already been a judgment made on that, and we're going by previous judgments.
I yield to Smokey.
No, it's fine. And again, it's just it's a matter of like, I don't think any admission on her part about her personal beliefs would have like altered her reputation on this situation. Like, I mean, it's not her beliefs that caused the backlash on this. It was like her discoveries. So like, I mean, her personal beliefs aren't even really part of the equation, you know, until, you know, you make it part of the equation, you know, and until you wonder, well, you know, like if she found this and all of the young earth community is like up in arms, like, okay, finally, we have our definitive closed case, like absolute proof that the earth is young. Because that's kind of what I hear about like the dinosaur soft tissue. It is kind of like that holy grail, you know, type of thing.
One of the definitive proofs that we have.
Definitive. Okay, see, Jungle just said it. Definitive. Yet the very person that discovered it doesn't look at it that way. And so I'm just wondering, I'm just like, at some point, are we not maybe falling into the same deception here a little bit? I mean, because here's the thing, I'm okay with approaching it from the idea that it was just discovered. The chick that discovered it isn't even 100% on it, you know, as in terms of her own, like, you know, convincibility level. It's not like she's going to tank her freaking, you know, career by all of a sudden saying, oh yeah, no, this is definitive, like Jungle said, this is definitive proof of young earth. I've changed my mind, you know, but like, that's not what's, I feel like maybe the community is taking more faith in it than the person that freaking found it. That's kind of where I'm at on it, I guess.
So could she be wrong?
I don't necessarily completely disagree with you on that. I just personally think that it's possible that she could have actually gotten worse ramifications, you know, from that if she had come out as like a YC. But that's just my perspective.
Well, I think it would make the case better
regarding
like
this,
if she actually, you know, like if she actually believed, like, you know, hey, this is a good case for young earth, that she could just come out and be like, hey, well, I'm a theist, I was old earth, and this is like really definitive proof, and now I'm young earth, and let that be a testimony. Because like, I mean, like,
well,
she I'll give her credit. I don't know anything about the woman. I don't know what type of Christian she is, or, you know, any of that stuff. You know, I don't know anything about her, but I would think, and maybe I'm assuming a lot here, that, you know, her Christianity is a bigger priority than her field of science.
Yeah,
so
but Smokey, I think hang on. But Smokey, by that logic, all of the Christians who work in academia who don't come out and make public declarations, I mean, you'd have to why would
there any? I mean, are there any? I mean, I think scientists are usually, I mean, we have Pew studies that tell us where scientists are split on their beliefs. I don't think they're like
right, but they're not coming out and directly challenging the status quo from a theistic perspective in terms of.
Well, no, I know, but I'm not.
I'm talking about the science. I'm talking about the science. So,
but you keep reframing the argument, Maddox. Like, I'm not talking about where she needs to all of a sudden become like a freaking, you know, evangelist for young earth. I mean, I'm just talking about her personal justification. Like, what is she reading from? Like, she collected the evidence, she found the evidence. What is she reading from it?
Smokey, I get what you're saying, but
not is she willing to go out and be an evangelist for young earth in the science community? That's not what I'm just talking about. You know, to state her own personal beliefs on the matter.
But Smokey, the point I'm making is like remove her from the equation. Okay, let's talk about this in terms of we had Emery. Emery was on earlier.
Well, I know you want to remove her from the equation because she's the whole point of the equation.
No, actually, I'm putting your position into context of the lunacy of the position you're taking. And when you look at what is the real world right now, okay, not from a hypothetical perspective, what's the real world? Okay, we have Emery. He was on earlier tonight. Okay, he's a young Earth creationist. He's currently in school. He is actively hiding until he finishes getting his piece of paper, out of concern of not getting the piece of paper if he comes out publicly. I'm just using him as an example, right? There's many of those people. They publicly hide their position. Oh yeah, I go to church, but they don't like talk about like, yeah, I think what I'm researching, what I'm discovering in the lab disproves evolution. Like, we know they're out there, but they're for the most part keeping under wraps.
Well, Well, but
So
not if they're already willing to say they're a theist in the science field. What does it matter if they say young or old Earth? Especially some chick that found young Earth evidence. What does it even matter? Like,
Peer
what does it even
pressure.
affect her?
So did you listen to a
pressure.
word I just said?
Validating the Bible historical
No, see,
record.
that's the thing is, I mean, like,
Yeah,
okay,
the only reason
John,
they
I
tolerate
think,
Mary Schweitzer is because she's old Earth. That's it. If she wasn't,
yeah,
and she wasn't trying to prove that those things could last millions of years, she'd be just destroyed and drummed out. She would have been destroyed and drummed
She
out
would have
ages
been
ago.
gone.
she has two different reasons to hold to old Earth. One, John stated already, so I'm not going to reiterate it. The other one is that she likely is within a community of Christians that believe in old Earth, and they are taught that the Bible teaches old Earth.
That's
So
her position, yeah, her belief.
I mean, when you get so confused that you think that the Bible says something it doesn't actually say, and then somebody comes up to you with evidence, or you find evidence that it's wrong, but you know the Bible has to be right, what are you going to do?
Yeah, that's her
You're going to
belief.
stand on the Bible. Sorry, Jungle.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, I don't think old Earthers are denying
Even
the
Dr.
Bible.
Sanford has trouble
I mean,
getting papers published in the secular journals, and Sal was talking about that he was having a hell of a time. He was so angry one time because he just kept on going back and forwards with these people, and he said they're just so close-minded. I mean, someone like Dr. Sanford, come on.
Well,
If
wait a
he
minute.
has trouble getting, his
Hold on.
paper was rock solid. They just the stuff that they were picking on, you'd have to ask Sal about it, but was really nitpicky, and they ended up just giving up in the end. And he said it was just the nitpickiest, ridiculous rubbish. It's like they accept a citation on Pokemon, right? But there's certain citations that the mathematics is 100% rock solid, and yet they won't even look at it. And that's the same with some.
Let me expand on that point you're making there, Jason. So, do you know, Smokey? Do you know much about like Dr. Sanford's like professional background, like what he did?
I'm not entirely exactly sure.
He invented the gene gun.
To be honest with you.
Yeah. Okay. So when one of the reasons he retired young was he was rich because he invented
hundreds of patents.
But like one of the biggest ones he ever invented was he literally, not figuratively, literally invented the process by which genetically modified foods have been created. Okay, not figuratively, literally. He licensed.
He invented the gene gun
to the biggest companies. Right, the player. Right, he was tenured. All this other kind of stuff. When he came out as a young Earth creationist, not only was he dramatically ostracized by his peers, okay? Rutgers University literally revoked his access to the library. Okay. We're talking about a massively public. The dude literally invented the process to genetically modified foods. Okay. That's the guy, right? They revoked his access to the freaking library.
That's just nasty. That's just nasty, vicious, and petty.
So the point I'm making in relation to the people who are running into the, hiding in plain sight kind of thing and not coming out publicly and doing all this kind of stuff is, if they will do that to somebody of his stature, what will they do to the little minion running around, or the person who is way further down the professional food chain? I mean, it's not conspiracy theory; it's legitimate. I mean, you think about the way that people are treating Dr. James Tour, right? As you know full well from having on your show, Smokey, he's literally one of the top 50 scientific minds of the freaking like the last 50 years. Like he's been not just like. Oh, I think he is. He's been like designated that, as you know, right? Like all of his rewards and that kind of stuff. And now all these
He's got 275 patents or something like that.
And all these little jackasses running around are talking mad shit about Dr. Tour and claiming he doesn't know what he's talking about. I mean, that little punk ass bitch boy, John Perry, literally stated that Dr. Tour didn't know what he was talking about in terms of chemistry.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the kind
Dr. Tour's building nano cars and stuff like that, and he goes through the steps that it takes to make even a simple protein, and there's thousands of steps. Like you think, like or a simple molecules, the thousands of steps that are required, and he goes through them not in so much detail because it would take him forever, but he puts up list after list after list after list just to go from one process to make one molecule that's one part of one protein. And when you see him read out slowly those lists and go through the whole thing, you just go, what? That's only one little molecule part of one, protein to get that, let alone, and he explains that his nanocars, people say that his nanocars are proof of evolution and all this. He explains it, and he talks about like the smallest molecule.
And here's the expansion point I was going to make in relation to Dr. Tour. Dr. Tour doesn't even argue about young Earth. He's kind of, old Earth, whatever. He didn't really take any kind of major definitive position on that, right? Kind of leans towards old Earth. And somebody of his stature is being attacked. I mean, think about it. If he wasn't the man, right, in terms of all the stuff he's done, I mean, I cannot imagine him not having been ousted from Rice University at this point, if he wasn't like at the literal pinnacle of his profession. I mean,
and the way he phrases it, he doesn't say that abiogenesis isn't possible. He says, we don't know yet, and we need to do more research. And they're like, oh, you're a heretic. I mean, that.
Yes, I mean, I'm smoking. I know you follow the logic here, but my point is just, taking two people of significant levels of success and the way that they are being attacked, ostracized, and publicly insulted by their quote unquote peers. And in reality, people who aren't even actually in the same stratosphere as them magically have the balls to talk this kind of talk this shit.
Here's the problem, Maddox, and it just doesn't answer my problem. And I get where you're coming from, and I definitely concede to the politics inside academia. But here's the thing. You got 2006 peer-reviewed study that the science community is basically split 50-50 between those that are atheist and those believes in a God or a higher power. It's basically 50-50 down the middle. So yet everyone's decided that they have to approach the sciences purely through looking at naturalistic paradigms. Okay. And that's what Dr. Tour does too, as you're so rightfully point out. He doesn't really push creationism in any real way at all, to be completely honest. I mean, he pulls into the area of pointing out how little we know about a bio and how we can't put as much faith in it as we have. And I'm fine with that. I'm fine with all of that. But again, it almost sounds like, here's the thing. Here, I'm trying to make it real simple. I would expect an atheist nihilistic scientist to absolutely lie to protect their profession and their position. I find it less likely or a little bit more incredulous that a Christian scientist would lie about their positions, their beliefs, or their findings. So, and I guess in that way, I see a bit of a challenge to the idea. Like, I can accept the idea that, yeah, there's a whole bunch of scientists that lie just to fit the norm, just to fit the state of affairs. But then, like, to just assume that, like, a Christian scientist will do the same thing, because of their protection of their career. I mean, well, great. I guess that's fine. Maybe they're not really a real Christian, I guess, maybe if they're willing to do that. Or maybe they are. I don't know. Maybe they have weightier measures of the law that they're considering. I just personally, like, for someone that's willing to put their academic reputation on the line by even saying that they're a God believer, like, will suddenly be like, oh, I can't say young Earth because that's just going too far. Like, I mean, I don't know.
In my church that committed adultery while he was a pastor.
Do what now?
I had a pastor in my church commit adultery with somebody else's wife while he was a pastor. And we found out he left. Like, being a Christian doesn't make you perfect.
No, I'm not. I'm not saying that, Agatha, but it does work for your paradigms to work. The paradigms that you guys are presenting, it requires you to place dishonesty on these people. in order for
requires
it
us to place weakness on man.
Well, call it. Well, you can soften it that way if you want, but it doesn't change the fact that in a roundabout way, in order to make this point stick, you guys have stuck is that Mary Schweitzer, whatever her name is a liar.
No, we said that
I don't think that she's a liar. I think that she is convinced that old earth is what the Bible says.
She believes in old earth. We believe in young earth. She believes in old earth. And
Hey, can I take a stab real quick? Can I step in on this? 'Cause I know a little something. Am I coming through?
Coming through a little hot.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm on my phone. Mary Schweitzer is actually a very, I believe she's a very sincere Christian. I don't believe she would lie at all about any of it. When that happened in 2007, she was blown away. Okay, if you look at an interview, like you said, she honestly probably, I mean, when she saw it, she probably thought, that dinosaurs probably lived some of these dinosaurs lived longer, but she wasn't going to come out right then because they were attacking her. For one, they were attacking her for saying that it was biofilm, it was contamination. So she wasn't going to say anything at that point. And you also had like Dr. Mark Armitage. He did his work independently, okay, and he had peer-reviewed work, and I believe it was Asta Chemica Histica or something like that. That was what I think was the magazine. And so the conclusion that he drew from that his peer-reviewed work. They fired him at Cal State North. And he won his lawsuit for that. And that's where he's got a lot of his probably got a lot of his microscopy equipment to do the work that he has. But point being that I believe she really at the time was holding back because she's gonna. Jack. They were just talking about a minute ago. Jack Horner, her boss, is the one they offered $20,000 to. That he just wasn't going to carbon date. You know what I mean? He wasn't going to give the creationists any leg up or whatever. Or something like that. What he said, or any ammo or something like that. So she had to know deep down if she come out at that point in time and said anything to the contrary of what the paradigm was, she would have lost her job. So not that she would lie at that point, but she was probably held back at that point because she's like, I'm gonna let's she retested. This is a several year process, and then she wanted to try to see if she could figure out if there was
Chris,
something.
What do you think? Do you think she's a legit convinced herself she's young Earth now? Or
No,
really
I think.
What do you think?
No, I think she's probably seriously old Earth.
Still,
creationist. I believe she was.
Think?
I believe she was to begin with, and I believe she probably still believes it. Yeah, but if it was
she
just
stands on what she believes the Word of God says.
Yep, I believe she believes that it's.
Hold on. I gotta address this because that's now the third time.
I mean, I'm kind of taking your back on this, Smokey. You know what I mean? I'm kind of taking your back on it because, I
know, Chris, and I appreciate it. I get where you're coming from, and I see what you're saying, and actually, I see there's a little bit of give and take on both sides that I can concede to, and I appreciate you. I didn't mean to cut you off. No,
you're fine. I cut you off. There you go.
No. Do your thing. Finish your thing. And I really.
No, I was pretty much done. I was just saying that we do have an exact example of what would have happened because Mark Armitage, he didn't toe the line, and he got fired. You know what I mean? Immediately.
Right.
I
believe that.
Okay.
I believe that scientists get fired all the time for having the wrong educated opinion, and I know that politics has sunk into academia on many different levels, and it's not as much about the pursuit of truth as the atheists would like us to believe it is, and I know that, and I'm not ignorant of it, but I also do want to look at the minutia, because I mean, for God's sakes, I'm not the type where I want to I don't want to just trust everything that comes out of scientists' mouths just for the sake of it. But I also want to be able to believe that, if we have actual Christians in the science field, that maybe they're going to be a little bit more, I don't know, credible than the rest of the freaking nihilist God haters that don't give a crap. I guess in some way I'm trying to find a way to be able to have some faith in these, people that are left in the field that are supposedly on our side. I guess I don't know.
Yeah, I would believe she was one. She seems like I can't say for 100%, but I would believe like 90% sure that what she says she believes. So I would back you up on that. I would just say take a look at not what he look at the microscopy work and look at his rebuttal to the iron preservation method, and you're talking about the polymerization. Just like they were talking about, if that was the case, I mean, like for one, the osteocytes in the bone cells, you don't have that much blood. I mean, it's not like just totally engulfed in the blood that you would need to cross-link those. Even if you did have like some kind of method to do it, like she spun out with the centrifuge with the coagulants, but if you look at
I mean, she had to like really like, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but I actually had asked Orge this. He had said that she had to really like douse the samples in a centrifuge with chemicals to pull anything out of it that was recognizable as the soft tissue, but the presence of it is the conundrum. The fact that, and that's what Orge didn't answer for me, which I felt a little, I mean, not against Orge, I think Orge was doing his best at the time, but like I don't feel like the answer was a complete answer that he gave to me, which is why I had to look a little bit more into it. But yeah, again, that's neither. But
the iron preservation has been, they've left it behind now. See, that was supposed to have solved it a few years back, and now they've went to what you're talking about with the polymerization, and like that's what I was saying before. Like you to knock on it when I'm supposed to debate knock on this, but I had of course I had a lot going on with my grandfather, so I never got a chance to. But if you put things in formaldehyde and they'll preserve it for a while, you know what I mean? But it's not going to preserve it. You leave that in a formaldehyde over time, that's going to degrade. I don't care if you put that into a freezer, into another freezer. You know what I mean? And they're not finding these things that are like in perfectly like pristine places. I mean, they're finding like 1.5 foot under the ground through the heat and thaw cycles, broken. Like the horn was broken. It had like roots coming through it. I mean, like it shouldn't be that perfectly undisturbed too. Not that it's just there. It's just like it's just perfect. Like so, it made it all 65 million years, and it didn't. You can still see the little philopode. I mean, you have to go to the site. Look, you can still even see the little. They can stretch it. And you can see like the osteocyte, which is the bone cell, the collagen, and you can see the little bitty hairs that come off of it. And they're like almost like a spider-like thing, and those are so intact. You would not have those preserved, even if they got completely even if it was like formaldehyde, you preserved it like that. They would have been disturbed by like plants coming through and busting them and knocking them. You know what I'm saying? They just wouldn't be that perfect. They just wouldn't do it.
But Chris,
go ahead.
But Chris, hang on, guys, hang on. But Chris, Knock has researched this. Raging Ronnie knows.
Oh God!
That
he didn't even know what the iron preservation method was. So I was like, "Dude, you don't even know what that is." And he's like, "I guarantee I know more about this than you." I said, "Oh man, I've emailed."
If you want to have some entertainment value, if you ever decide to bring up another rage stream, the interaction, it's probably like a 20-minute back and forth between Chris and Knock on this subject. God. Dude, it was hilarious.
Yeah, I imagine.
Listen to
Well, he brought that paper up you're talking about, Smokey. But he's just like, he brought the paper up. I'm like, well, what about it? And he didn't know anything about it. He's like, well, there it is.
We didn't even understand what it was probably saying. He had no clue what it was saying. I've barely started researching it, and I'm having to like look into it to try to figure out what it's saying. But Ronnie has no chance.
Dude, it was priceless. He kept telling Chris that he knew what he was talking about, that Chris didn't know what he was talking about, and that he had read the paper and that he understood it. And it's like, and then Chris kept asking him questions, which he couldn't answer. And it's like
it's Ronnie and Peterson, man. It's Tweedledum and Tweedledick. Like they're just completely lost causes when it comes to anything like logical or conversational. It's a complete and utter disaster. I should go back and watch it. It probably is hilarious. It probably is really fun.
But one thing, if they could, if that was that good of a preservation method, then they need to throw out the cryogenics where they freeze people's brains and just use this method and like save organs and save people's brains, because like it's going to save all the information. I mean, if you can really get iron or the polymerizations to do that, then you've got something on your hands. But this has been like 2 years, or no, it's been like probably 4 years now. So like, that's a far cry from 65 million.
like the frustrating thing for me, because I am legit like a fence sitter on it. So like I can see like where the young earthers are already on that side and they're just looking for the, you know, the things that help their case, and the same on the other side. But me, I'm in the middle. Like, I don't know, and I haven't really made up my mind on it, and I'm not really convinced necessarily either way. To me, it's very frustrating.
And
you know what I'll say if I jump off to piggyback off that? Hold on one second.
Just quickly, the iron preservation thing. Yeah. I'm not going to be long. Is Genesis History put up a new video on the Mark Armitage soft tissue, where it's only not a long video, and he talks about how iron affects collagen, and in that video. So I'll go and find that one as well.
Yeah, I gave up on the iron thing. I didn't think the iron thing was a good excuse. I had heard that, you know, debunked almost immediately. But that's actually brings me to where my frustration is being the person kind of like in the middle line, like on the fence of it, is like I can see a concession inside the young earth side of like the benefit of this argument, and then I see this perpetuation on the other side of, well, it's the same old argument. We just haven't discovered how this happened yet. It can't possibly be young earth. So it could be this and this and this and this. And then here's me, the fence sitter, digging through a whole bunch of hypothetical horse crap that isn't even, you know, really necessarily scientific, but it's just a bunch of conjecture. And, you know, it's a little bit, it's a little bit frustrating in terms of, like, I can imagine, I'm feeling myself a little bit in the shoes of some of the agnostics here again. Like, of this idea of like having this thing, and I'd like to know more about it and kind of have a bit of more of a definitive understanding or answer on it. But I find less of that and more fights about biases.
You feel like you don't know if you can trust either side or who's going to tell us the truth.
You know, it's kind of that type of thing I'm feeling with it. So,
but you know what, Smokey, in your defense, or on this is what I've been saying. I've said it tonight a couple of times, and I always say this: is it doesn't necessarily prove young Earth creationism. It just proves that at least some dinosaurs may have lived longer than you thought. You know what I mean?
No, and I was okay with that too. By the way,
you know that. So okay with you can still have an old Earth and have those dinosaurs that didn't all get maybe killed off by the asteroids or whatever. You know what I mean?
I don't think Smokey cares really either way.
Well, that was the first thing I said when the soft tissue came up. It was literally the first thing I responded to, because it's just the first thing that came to my mind of like we just found the coelacanth like not too long ago that we thought was extinct for God knows how long. I mean, you know, like we don't know what was trudging around in some
fossil.
Well, I was going to
we don't know what was trudging around in the rainforest 200 years ago. We weren't even looking in the rainforest 200 years ago. I mean,
if they did find like some type of stegosaurus or something, or if they did find something like that, then they would say, you know what, then they would probably that would be okay to say that, you know what I mean? Because then they'd have to, you know, like when they found the coelacanth, that was supposed to be an index fossil, the coelacanth was, and then it disappeared from the fossil record for like 70 million years, and then they found it, like you said, 1972.
I was thinking the same thing, that maybe this Triceratops, maybe it survived the global flood, maybe it was walking around and it was just buried a couple hundred years ago.
You know what leans credence to it is, if you saw, I mean, I know this is, have you seen the stones, the dinosaur stones, the Inca stones?
Yeah.
Right. And, all the pictures, they're usually of,
what are they?
30 minutes actually.
The Ica stones. They're Ica stones.
Not just there's pottery. There's stuff all over the globe from different cultures that have like images of dinosaurs. Various cultures.
People were making pottery and carvings and wall paintings and stuff with a bunch of big lizards and crap. Wasn't that kind of a thing? I mean,
they look just like what the you know, like Stegosaurus.
The descriptions of these dinosaurs are
in the
even ancient pottery has long net sauropod on vases and stuff.
There's some from some paintings from China where they're literally freaking writing them.
Yep.
I mean, the freaking Chinese
be the ones. Yeah, they're taming the dinosaurs. The freaking Chinese, man. They'll do anything.
I mean that. I remember when I first time I saw
what they call a dragon.
I remember talking about the Chinese emperor that had a dragon feeder employed.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the
Yeah,
first
he had
time
a
I
royal
saw.
dragon feeder. Yeah.
I remember the first time I saw those, like some of those drawings and paintings and such of them were freaking riding dinosaurs. I'm like, what the flying? You know what is this going down here right now? Like we're. So apparently nobody knew these things existed until we started digging them up. Like 150 years ago is the first time anybody knew that dinosaurs existed, right? And then from 3,000-4,000 years ago, we've got freaking paintings of Chinese people riding the freaking dragon, man. Like, you ever wonder why like so many different symbols in Asian culture are freaking dragons? Like,
and all these tales and every culture has tales about dragons and stuff. Yeah, it makes sense.
What's the British flag? I think it is.
Yeah, there's dragons on. Yeah.
But if you think about it, the same supposed strata, or let's say they've got. If you look at the insects, and they might have been bigger or whatever, but they're identical to the same ones we have today. Okay, but they haven't changed. Okay, but dinosaurs supposedly went to birds during that same time. But yeah, dragonflies didn't change. Bees didn't change. Spiders didn't change.
Changed in size.
Dragonflies.
Yeah, well, of course they changed in size after the flood.
3-foot wingspan. I was in the Amazon. I was attacked by a dragonfly that was 3 inches in length.
They had like 6 foot
Imagine one
gophers,
with 3 feet wingspan attacking you.
Yeah, centipede's like 8 feet long, man.
That would
I guess to like finish up my point too, and I should probably leave too and probably let everyone go. I could take this all night, but like just to like
you were going to
finish
yell
my
at me or
final point.
something.
Well, I was Argotha, but I'll tell you what. I maybe we can tackle that some other time. I'll remember it. It's not a big deal. We'll come back. We'll circle back to it at some point. Oh God, I'm sounding like that horrible, filthy, awful bitch for Biden. Okay, all right. I'll circle back to you, bro. I'll circle back to you. Okay, all right. Yeah. No, but just to kind of like finish up, because this kind of ends up being kind of my big shtick on a lot of these things, is like a allowance to some of the things that almost seem like a level of mystery, inside scripture, the things that weren't like maybe we interpret explicitly that weren't necessarily explicit to the people that were even writing them or reading them at the time. And I'll just leave with this because it is like kind of the thing I go to, and I know everyone's probably heard this if they've heard any old earth argument at all. But the word day in Hebrew yom has 4 different literal definitions. And it's only really the hardliners that demand that only one of those definitions can be correct. And I'm willing to take the position that any of them could potentially be correct. And only through some really sound exegesis and seeing what comports with reality do we get a clearer idea of what's necessarily being communicated. So
every time a number is associated with the word yom, it means a literal day. Every time that evening or morning is associated with the word yom, it means a literal day. And God said, hold on, and God said in Genesis 1, evening,
I know
morning.
all those arguments. I know all those arguments. I've heard them before. You're not telling me anything new. Okay. So I'm not saying that to get into this. I'm saying this to lay down a principle. Okay. The principle is in the idea, which by the way, you're literally just showing that you're completely ignoring the principle that I'm trying to paint right now, because you are so hardline, young earth, that you just can't help yourself. And the whole point is a consideration of allowance of a principle of that there is some error, potential error in interpretation. Now, I've heard your arguments. I know your arguments. I've heard them many times from the young earthers. They are usually not very good in terms of the actual convincing. If they were, they would work. But I'll just take one. I'll just take one to show you, because I've heard them all. I've heard them all multiple times, and they haven't worked for me, and I've refuted them all. But the one where you say the day in the earth, and nowhere else in the book is the day in the earth with yom used. Yeah, no kidding, because it's literally the only place in the book that the morning and the evening is used with day. It's literally the only place. But there are plenty of other places. Hold on. There are plenty of other places where it is used for day, and it can mean a 24-hour period of time or one day where that terminology isn't used. So it just doesn't, in terms of a claim of consistency in the text for that exegesis, it's fallacious. It's a non sequitur. It doesn't work.
What?
Now and again, I'm happy to actually even full on debate this with you, Argotha. If you want to even come over to my channel and an open mic, we can unpack it in full depth. But what I was really just trying to
I think that you need to know that I'm probably a lot more open-minded than you realize.
Well, here's the thing. You said, and this is why I didn't want to get into it. You said that like the people that are believing old earth like don't believe the Bible. Like, and you said that like 3 times.
Oh, no, that's not what I said. I said that they were raised or taught that that's what the Bible said, and therefore they stood on what they believed the Bible said.
Yeah.
All right, so like you're not like claiming that like an old earther is denying the Bible.
No, I mean, I think they're confused.
Well, yeah.
Well, confused how?
If they say it has to be millions of years old, I say it has to be no more than 5,000 years old, because we know when the global flood happened, and the global flood is key because that's when all the fossils were buried, and that's when civilization began with the Sumerians and Egyptians and everyone was 5,000 years ago. No more.
Well, there's a lot in that. I don't know if
I want to say one thing. Although I am young Earth creationist, I want to back Smokey on one thing, because what he's talking about, there is different usage, and I thought it would be just as simple as sometimes. Like I'm pretty heavily studying into the eternal destruction and conditional mortality or eternal torment, and the you have to really look. There's so many places that you would think that they use it almost in the same sentence, but they can't be the same thing. And I can give an example in my next video. I'm going to give an example, a really good one in Jude. But and then let Chris Dead explain it afterwards. But like, yeah, you do have to look at these words, and maybe the truth, like on what I'm talking about, in hell lies somewhere in the middle on that. And maybe it does the same thing on the earth. Maybe there is an age. I'd have to look. I have not delved deep enough into Genesis to see if there is a spot or a place in there to where like there could be an age.
So we know what that I got to leave on one point though, and that's fine. I mean, say whatever you got to say, but I got one point I got to make, because there is something from a actual spiritual perspective that I need to lay down on old earth that young earth completely annihilates, destroys, and I think kind of disrespects. So and I just, it's a very strong, very spiritual, very hard point, but go ahead and say what you got to say, and I got to leave on it.
Go ahead.
Well, I want to say that I'm open-minded, and as long as you're not a Calvinist, I think we can have a civil discussion.
I don't know what I am soteriologically. I say I'm closest to Molinist, but no, I don't like Calvinism or predeterministic thinking. I think it makes God a moral monster.
Oh, that's the most reserved response to Calvinist I have ever heard.
Well, I got a lot of. Well, dude, I got a lot of Calvinists in my circle. I mean, I got Kenny Rhodes, I got Veckel, I got Jill, I got, I mean, here's the thing. I don't agree with most of probably any of their soteriological views, but I do respect them in terms of some of their perspectives. I've challenged Veckel and Jill on one of their streams about Calvinism, and I think that they were honestly trying to tackle it, and then Ryan the Presbyterian got there and it fell apart. So
I mean, I like kind of half jest about it. I do get a little I hate Calvinism.
It depends on the type of Calvinism. I've learned it depends on the type of Calvinism, Argotha, and we when we think Calvinism, we all think hyper Calvinism. That's what we think, but that's not like Thomist Calvinism. Like there are different types of Calvinism that don't focus on that hyperlined predestination of evil, which I think is what you're thinking of.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a logical conclusion to it, and I don't assume that everybody gets it. And I think that my suspicion is that people have to live with cognitive dissonance their entire life to hold to something that is Calvinist, but not hyper Calvinist.
Well, here's why I have a hard time necessarily going like hyper hard on the Calvinists in terms of a perspective of like a heretic or or anything like that. This is why I have a problem drawing the line, because I can see the fact that they seem to be interpreting the scripture. They're believing all the scripture through and through. They're just interpreting like hyper literally, like extremely wooden, extremely rigid. Like the statements of God's supremacy don't have secondary implications. They can only have primary implications. Like God stating his supremacy
Right.
over all, it to them means he's micromanaging. And I'm able to draw the differentiation between the two because I realize I can't make God dualist. I can't make God part evil, part good. So because scripture clearly says that that's not the case. God is all good. So I have to interpret along the paradigm of what God has revealed about himself. If I'm coming to a conclusion or a philosophy that has led me to pervert the nature of God as he's revealed himself, clearly I'm in error. And that's where I think maybe the Calvinists are going, but I can see where they are reading these texts that are saying, it's only God, it is all God, he destines everything, he has to pull people to him. Like, I can appreciate the fact that they are at least doing everything they can to really much believe the text, as it's written. So I don't know, how hard I can necessarily go.
I think they have a high view of God, and they take verses out of context to prove that. Prove their high view of God.
Yeah, and I think there's texts that they have real problems with that they can't answer.
Like 1 Timothy 4:10.
I think the biggest
what is that one?
Is really just
God is the savior of all men, especially of those that believe.
Oh, interesting. I didn't think about that one. The other one I destroy them on very, very regularly. In fact, it's a real quick, usually a slam dunk sledgehammer to their worldview, especially if they're hyper deterministic. It's the one in Jeremiah. I think it's Jeremiah 7. It says, where it's talking about the children of Israel sacrificing their children to Moloch, and he says, this never even came into my mind. With the context, of course, being that God would never even think to command the children of Israel to do this thing, type of deal. But the fact that God will admit that he would never even think to predetermine someone to do this thing pretty much completely annihilates their entire philosophical soteriology. So it's a really good verse. Even James White can't answer it. In fact, when James
I think
White's
the best they can
with
come up with it is it's hyperbole, or they would say it's something like personification, or it's a separate type of thing.
Yeah, my concern with that is that it literally just seems like an attempt to actually legit deny the text. That's what worries me.
I agree totally.
It's a problem. Yeah, no, that's a problem. I feel like once I confront a Calvinist with that passage, or even the Moses and the rock, God predetermined Moses to violate his predetermined will. Make that make sense. Anyway. So yeah. I digress. Anyway, like I said, I didn't want to take the whole last part of the show, but I did have one final, kind of heart thing that I'll leave on. But anyone else wants to say anything or springboard off that, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, there's several times where, okay, imagine the part where Abraham, he tries to actually kind of get across to God that he could not kill everybody that's in Sodom and Gomorrah, right? Because he knows that Lot is there, and he's like, if even just 50 righteous people are there, are you going to kill them, right? He's questioning God there, right? You're telling me that God had predetermined him to do that? This wasn't just his legitimate questioning of God, or just trying to get God, thinking that he shouldn't do that?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Think about it. It's just that simple, right?
I don't think there's a way to get around the idea that Calvinism makes God a moral monster.
Exactly. Yeah, he's everything that happens that's evil would have to be put onto him. You could never justify him putting a single person into hell if that were true.
Yeah.
It all depends whether or not he authors the secondary agency, and that's where Calvinist camps will start to differ. It's the predeterministics, the micromanagers that think that God that actually legitimately authors secondary agency. So when God says he sent what is it, the Assyrian king from the north. Like they look at it like God actually inspired, the Assyrian king's hatred, as opposed to, working inside the actual occurrences of reality, claiming ownership and sovereignty over them. It's two completely different philosophical perspectives. One basically associates evil with God, and one keeps him free of it. Well, you can guess which one I choose.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, really the only logical conclusion, in my opinion, is this one where he simply guides certain things to happen, but he already knows what bad things are going to happen, so therefore doesn't have to be involved in those things, right? That would make
he can claim it
if you're going to
because he could have stopped it. The point is he claims it because he could have stopped it, like the Assyrian king. He could have made sure the Assyrian king died in childbirth, or the army was never raised up, or whatever. Could have been a million. But the fact that he allowed the Assyrian king to reach his point, to reach his hatred, and then succeed in his campaign, well, yeah, sure. God gets to claim ownership over that, even if it is passive instead of proactive.
Yeah, I mean, the real irony with all of that is just that, so imagine that he did kill, said king, right? Well, who's to say that there wouldn't be another person just like that king that would come down the line, right? There's been how many?
God could kill them, and he could disperse the people. Well, no authority. Romans 13, no authority comes up except for that which God allows or wills. So God, it's one of those things where it ends up being whether God acts or doesn't act in a dynamic way is ultimately irrelevant. It actually ends up equating to the same thing. Because it sounds ridiculous, but it's actually true. Because if you can see the entire timeline of reality, and he sees, all potential paths, whether he does something or doesn't do something means that the final point is his will. Because if he dynamically acted, he knows what would change, and if he refrains from dynamically acting, he knows what would remain. So therefore, because of his positional relationship to reality, his action and inaction ends up being exactly the same thing and still equals out his will.
I would ask Smokey if at some point before the next time we talk, you could load up a whole bunch of verses. So I have a question about God's omniscience in the classical sense. So I question it. And if you could show me verses that prove it, then I'll shut up about it.
No, that's okay. I'm a little touchy with the overuse of the omni words in typical apologetics. So omniscience, omnipotence, these would have slightly more specific definitions for me in a philosophical realm. I guess I would need to know a little more, but we can do a stream if you want sometime, Argotha. I guess I need to know a little bit where your philosophical challenges are coming from in terms of omniscience. Are you an open theist or something like something like that?
Well, I think that I might be something like an open theist.
Okay.
But
you need to come on the show because
show me that I'm wrong.
No, I'll show you, and actually I can with a few verses. It won't take that many, and we can do it on a stream, and it would actually be helpful for a lot of people. In fact, it's also going to be good for my audience because there's a guy who's a Patreon who loves me and supports my channel, and his name is Mindbreaker, and he does nothing but take jabs at me for the 5 minutes of my Christian life that I was an open theist. So having you on the show will finally, for the love of God, detract some of that has been directed at me. So I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, sure. Let's set that up. I'm good for that.
Okay.
And by the way, just so you know, and it's actually a pretty simple principle that proves it. And it's the principle of middle knowledge. And once you unpack that and understand the verses that show that it exists, the omniscience component becomes pretty clear. So, but yeah, I'm happy to unpack that with you. It'll be a good time.
Yeah, sure.
Cool.
I gotta go to bed too.
I guess I'll leave on my note.
Did LPP bounce?
Did he?
He hasn't been in for a while, so.
I
guess maybe he did.
He must have went to sleep.
That's fine. Well, I
think he took some Ambien a while back, and
yeah, right. I know, right? Because Maddox was supposed to wear me down. Yeah, right. Well, you guys got me debating, so it's kind of like that just gets my blood boiling. You know, it gets the heart pumping. Anyway, so I guess I'll leave on my final point, which is kind of like the reason I believe in old Earth isn't actually scientific based, and it's weird to say that, but you know, I've converted, and I say that loosely. It's not like it's something I'm proud of that I've converted someone to old Earth, but like this is where like I go to with it, like in the heart of the feeling of the context of the 6th day of Genesis. And I find that so much is robbed from like some of the richness of that story by crunching it into a strict literal 24-hour period of time. And it has a lot to do with the methodology that God chose in the pathway of bringing Eve to Adam. It wasn't a instantaneous automatic decision, and he didn't create Adam and Eve alongside each other. He had a real specific plan and choice, and what he did is he exposed Adam to the nature of reality and also to the other animals who likely were already coupled in sexes, male and female, and allowed him to feel a pull, a need, a desire, a want, an urge, something more than himself, something beyond just himself, an idea of some type of mate, noticing that he was lacking in this, that there was something, some sort of companionship, social component of his nature that he desperately wanted. And it was only then after the appropriate amount of time had transpired that Adam felt this urge, and God knew that it was appropriate to bring Eve to him. So he put him to sleep. He did surgery on him. Adam recovered, and then Eve was brought to him. And then Adam's declaration, finally, after one long 12-hour yom, this woman is brought to me. No, I think that perverts the beauty of this story, of God's sociological genius at reaching down to us and realizing the nature of the being that he created, the desire to only give us the gifts at the right time we're supposed to receive them, which also perfectly and pristinely explains the importance of the Eden story. Because mankind was, I believe, eventually supposed to eat of that tree, but at God's time, because the knowledge of good and evil was a gift, and one to be used, not abused, and one to be taken at only the right time when mankind had been prepared appropriately. And if we believed in faith and listened to God, the day probably would have come where we would have been given that gift, and we would have received it appropriately and timely, and wouldn't have been cursed in the process. So that shine through in the Genesis story of God reaching out to us on a person to person, an actual personal level, not just a overseer or a king, but an actual person to person, working with us on a sociological level to give us that which was good for us at the time it was good for us. This is what pushes me to an
So
old interpretation.
do you know, Smokey, do you know how long the day was?
Well, Yom
18
only
hours.
has four. Yeah, Yom only has four literal definitions. So it can either be a 12-hour period of time, a 24-hour period of time, part of the daylight hours, or the final definition is a long but definite period of time. So just like
but
the
you don't
days
know,
of Noah.
you
Like
wouldn't
we don't
know if
know
it was 100 years, 700 years,
Well, that's the point. It's not.
100,000 years.
Well, that's the point, is that back in those times when it was written, such statements would have been incoherent and unnecessary. And the whole point of the narrative and the way that it's painted is not to give us some scientific super text as to exactly how God did it, but to actually give us a layout of a plan for the Sabbath and also for his covenant with us. I mean,
So
everything in the Genesis
how
story
long do we
points towards
rest?
these covenants.
Do we rest one day, or do we rest 100
Well,
years or 700?
that's what I'm saying, Jungle. That's why it needed to be painted that way, is because it needs to be relatable. You know, like when Moses is painting down the law and he says God created it in 6 days and rested on the seventh. Well, clearly that's a statement colloquially to recognize to them of the establishment of the Sabbath. That's why the narrative needed to be painted that way. Just the way that the narrative is painted with the proto-evangelion, or with the first sacrifice, the first animal skin that they're covered with. All this stuff that's mentioned is mentioned for a reason and a purpose, and it's put in a narrative context for a purpose. It wouldn't be a functional narrative if it was hyper scientifically accurate. Like it would be a failure on the priority in order to be a success in the minority, and that makes no sense. That
Plus,
just
God
makes
is
no
just
sense.
awesome.
Well, God is awesome, but he knows how to deal with us on our level. And that's even what he was doing with Abraham, like Pigs brought up. Like Abraham sitting there
Wait, hold
actually
on.
questioning God, but God is sitting there actually humoring him. Why? Because it's a relationship thing. You're getting to know this person. Abraham opens by saying, God, I know you're not this bad of a God that you would punish the just. I know you're not this person. Like, he's actually challenging God, and God's not coming down on him all harsh, like, how dare you, don't you have faith in me? No, he's actually approaching him on his level, building a relationship, building trust. That's an incredible statement to God, the almighty God, lowering himself to our level, not just as Christ, but since the beginning of creation. It's an incredible testimony to not just that our God is personal, but how personal, hyper personal, super personal, sociologically, psychologically personal. It's incredible.
Yeah. So I would just ask, do you see like some sort of logical contradiction in the idea that Genesis, speaking of days, was literal?
I see a dilution, and I see a creation of challenges. I see things where we have issues answering the atheists on some of these challenging issues. But again, it's not my primary reason to look at this. Maybe at one point it might have been to look at this from a science level and be like, well, I want to agree with the scientists and the Bible, and I think there's a lot of people that do that. But what I just described to me, is a real heart sociological context from inside the text that tells me trying to crunch that sixth day into a 24-hour period of time, I think almost dilutes, or if not destroys, some of the potential beauty inside of what that narrative might be painting. And again, that's just me. I'm not necessarily saying all of you need to agree with me, but this is my take, and this is how it has spoken to me in this context, and do with it as you will.
Yeah, I think that it would be really cool to have a conversation with you and maybe go all over the place.
All right, well, whatever. Yeah, that's cool, man.
Saturday
I
night.
do open mics all the time. I do a morning show every morning starting Monday through Friday. Just shoot me an email even. Maddox has got it, or you can go to my about page on my YouTube. It's got my email there. Find me on Facebook, facebook.com/Smokey Saint. I'm all over the place, dude. Just type me in. Shoot me a message. We'll line up a date when you're free, and we'll just do a stream. I'll be fine. No worries.
Okay, can you link one of those?
Oh yeah, here. I'll tell you what. Let me put mine as well, since I'm here, right?
I'd love to be able to do a stream with somebody about like the various stories behind Abraham, and just the things that he went through in his life, because I think he's probably one of the most interesting characters in all of the Bible.
Yeah, he's one of the top typologies of Jesus, I think, too. Not him. Like the story where it relates.
Right.
He was
He's
the
one of
only
the
righteous
reasons that I
person.
question God's omniscience.
Abraham was the
I
only.
am good with that, Argatha. I'd love to discuss that with you too, because it's a good topic, and it's good for the audience too. So I'm all for it. So there's my email there in side chat. So just shoot me a message, and we'll line something up.
Cool.
But Yeah, I guess I'll take off, guys. Thanks for having me. Thanks to Maddox, freaking bum, already passed out, leaving me to
Yeah,
run the
man. I
freaking
even
show.
came back in, and he was going to say something, and I waited around for him to say it. I looked up, and he's gone.
He just let the stream be put on my back. That bum. I knew he would. Okay, well, whatever.
He's waiting for his chance out, wasn't he?
Yeah, no, he's just like, oh, Smokey's here. It'll be good content. I can go to sleep. To heck with it. It's all good. Yeah, I know how it is. Yeah, I know how it is. All right, guys. Well, anyway, God bless. Have a good night.
God bless. I'm out too, guys.
God
Good
bless,
night.
Smokey. Good night, Chris. God bless.
Yeah. Good night, Jungle, and
Take it
everybody
easy,
in the
Chris.
chat too. I'm going to
Chris,
go back to bed.
Everybody.
Have a good one, Chris.
Argotha. All right.
God bless
Take
you.
care. God bless.
I gotta go to bed too. So.
Oh.
All right, Bob. It's been good, man.
Hi, Bob. My wife is not liking me staying up till 4 in the morning talking to you guys.
Yeah, it's rough.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm sorry, man.
Yeah, I got to find a way to balance it, and I really haven't figured it out yet. You know,
Yeah,
I wish these streams started like earlier.
Yeah,
but they don't. So, you know, I'll figure it out.
Well, not to be harsh, but I mean, it just works better for me because I work till 10 p.m. and I like I said, I live in Salt Lake City, Utah, so that's like super late for the majority of people there.
Yeah.
I don't see why that's harsh.
No, I just meant, like, you know, if I ever had to hop on, I would be like probably getting on at the very end of the stream.
Oh, okay, I see. Anyway, God bless you guys. 1 Corinthians 1-4, the gospel by which we are saved is that Jesus Christ died for the forgiveness of our sins. Well, he died for our sins. According to the scriptures, he was buried and he was raised from the dead according to the scriptures. God bless and good night.
And we are raised with him.
Praise the Lord. God bless you.
Amen.
Hi, Bob. Hi, Bob. Yeah, Abraham was the only righteous person other than Shem, who was basically supposedly his mentor. Abraham was
supposedly. I mean, I'm not sure if it's Melchizedek or if it was actually Shem, but there's a lot of speculation behind all that.
Well, according to the book of Jasher, it was Shem was because when Abraham ran away, he was raised by Shem.
Yeah, because right, and that's why he knew about the righteousness of God and about not serving idols. And I remember hearing the story about where he went back to his father after his coming of age or whatever, and his father had all these idols that were set up, and then he had destroyed the majority of the idols and then put an axe that he had used to destroy them into the hand of the last idol. And his father comes down here hearing the commotion, and he of course is freaking out, asking why would he do this? And then he's like, well, what are you talking about? That idol's the one that did it,
Yeah,
and his dad
they're
is like,
not very powerful gods anyway. If Abraham was able to destroy them,
right? Exactly. That's the whole point he was making. It was just that, like, clearly you're worshiping something that can't do anything to defend you, your family, or nothing, And it's just ironic because his father still worshipped idols all the way to his death, based on what the passage said there. But you'd think he would have learned his lesson after that incident.
Yeah. Well, actually, yeah, they threw him into a fiery furnace, and the people throwing him in died.
He survived.
He survived. And the other person who was interested, who was his brother or nephew or somebody, he was also died because he wasn't righteous like Abraham. But he was interested in the things he was saying. Anyway. But
well, I mean, I'd love to do like a stream just talking about Abraham and his life escapades, because he had all kinds of interesting things that they had talked about. Like there's the time where he goes and he fights those kings. There's like the 5 kingdoms, and he goes and saves Lot. And then I think it was. They said that there was an army of like I don't want to not centaurs. What do they call those things? Not pan. I can't think of the word. Satyrs. I think it was
Army of what?
Similar to satyrs, yeah.
Oh.
What's that?
What kind of army?
It was like an army of satyrs or something like that. I'm pretty sure I read that correctly, but it's, so basically they're like half animal, not chimeras, but like half goat, half men is what I remember reading.
Oh.
And I'll have to go and find the passages so I can get more detail on that.
Yeah, we'll have to go back because I don't remember that.
Yeah, it's been a while since I heard about that one. That was from like a couple of years ago, so I got to go back and reread it. But then there's another passage that was about, I think it was like these half men, half lion beasts that were also described in one of the passages during that era. So I think it was also one that was involved with Abraham, but I think it was whenever he was Abram, not Abraham yet. So
yeah, what is that the book of Jasher? Did you?
So it's either the. Let me think.
What other books are there about the?
I don't want to say it's the Book of Jubilees. It could be Jasher, but let's see. I've gone over the Book of Enoch, Book of Jasher, Book of Giants, Jubilees, and I think I actually read this in the I want to say. I want to say it's actually in the main canon. I want to say it's in there. Some of the stuff that I was talking about. Again, I'll have to go back and just double check that, but I do think that some of it's in the main canon.
Yeah. Yeah, just whenever you find it, I gotta check that out.
All right, man. Well, hey, I know it's super late. I'm like falling over here, man. Anyways, I appreciate the opportunity. I hope you'll have a blessed night, all right?
All right. The pigs can fly. I don't know if you stated your real name. All right, I'll see you.
Yeah, my name is Matt. No worries.
All right, Matt. All right, bye. I'll take off too. God bless everyone. Draw near to God, He will draw near to you. And He will cleanse you if you confess your sins.